Here we go.
Looks in both directions.
One there, yep.
Okay, Sarah.
Are you guys ready?
Sure.
Okay.
Yes. Figure it out.
All right, I will now call to order tonight's meeting of the Evanston Preservation Commission. We have a quorum of 11 commissioners present. The City of Evanston
Yeah.
For old and new business, I will ask staff to read each case into the record. Once the case has been read into the record, the applicant presents an overview of the proposal, including evidence and testimony that support the applicable review standards being met. Commissioners will then ask questions of the applicant. Following the questioning period, members of the public may speak toward the application, keeping their comments to 3 minutes or less. Following public comment, the applicant will have the opportunity to respond to any evidence or testimony against the application as it relates to the review standards. The commission then closes the record and proceeds to deliberation and a motion to approve the proposal or approve with conditions. A simple majority of the quorum present is required for a motion to carry. After old and new business conclude, the commission considers the previous public meetings minutes and then discusses actions pertaining to long-range planning goals. The first item on the agenda is public comment. Is there anyone here from the public wishing to speak? Okay, did we have anybody?
No.
Via email?
No.
Okay. Seeing none, the next item on the agenda before new business tonight, we have a special presentation as part of our speaker series from Shorefront Legacy Center. Do you want to read this into the record?
I sure can.
Okay, thank you.
Laurice and Dino will provide a presentation regarding the work of Shorefront, an Evanston-based archival institution dedicated to illuminating the rich tapestry of Black history on Chicago's suburban North Shore. Topic areas will include ongoing cultural heritage initiatives, the African American Heritage Sites Program, and preserving integrity to culture and history, commonly known as PITCH.
Great, thank you. Whenever you'd like to begin, if you wouldn't mind, please introducing yourselves, that would be lovely.
I'm Laurice Bell. I am the Executive Director at Shorefront Legacy Center.
And I'm Dino, founder of the Shorefront Legacy Center.
And for one of the first times, I'm going to lead. I'm following along. Shorefront Legacy Center, I came to Shorefront just in the last year, so I've been there a year and a couple of months, but I was enthralled by Dino's work, and Dino for me is a hero in what he's accomplished, not just in our town, but anywhere you go. His work is so important. Dino founded Shorefront in 1996. Oh, I've got to learn how to do this, Dino. It's not working for me. I'll let you do it. Dino founded Shorefront. Having always been interested in history, having sat at his grandmother's knees hearing about history, he really held on to it. He went to to a local history center and asked for Black history. They came out with a couple of file folders marked colors. This was in 1996, and he said something needs to be done about that. The idea was that Blacks had not done anything integral to building Evanston that really made it important to have our histories collected. So Dino, being Dino, went home and got to work. And I mean home. He did it on his kitchen table, and he stayed there until his wife insisted that he leave. It was staying at the kitchen table by himself or going someplace else and remaining married to her. And he likes her, so. Shorefront moved to 2121 Church Street. And what I have to say is Shorefront, though it has a lot of collections, Dino ran Shorefront basically as a volunteer until I came on. So he moved to another place, 2121 Church Street in 2004. You see in this picture some of the pieces that we have, including the emergency sign that we got from Community Hospital just as it was being torn down. So Dino worked really hard to build trust within the community, not just Evanston, all up and down the North Shore. And Shorefront collects and preserves Black history, Evanston up to Lake Forest. After being 4 years at that space, moved to 2010 Dewey Avenue, which you might recognize as being foster school family focus. Stayed there until 2013. In this time period, Dino got the first big collection, which was the Jourdain collection of the Jourdain family, which they all moved to Evanston. Were not born in Evanston, but adopted Evanston as their city and made quite a difference, not just in Evanston, but around the country. This is where we are now, which is at Sherman United Methodist Church, just across the street and down the alley. And we've been there since 2013, building, and we now have gotten to about 725 linear feet of collection. And we've basically outgrown our space at Sherman United Methodist Church as much as we love it. We're needing to expand, and that is what we've been doing since I've been on. We've been doing it all along. We are still getting about 100 linear feet a year, and we have about 125 linear feet that has not been processed. So as we move along, we are building our staff. I am looking to hire our first full-time archivist, which is a great thing for us. And we're looking to hire an ops person. So as you see our areas of interest going up from Evanston, Kenilworth, Wilmette, Winnetka, Glencoe. In the past, the communities had more Black presence. It's changed quite a bit. Evanston has now, was this from 2010?
This was
2010, 16,000, almost 17,000 people, but even now it's lower with 74,000. Glencoe is down to 176 Black residents, Lake Forest 271. And I'm going to say this was 14 years ago, so the numbers are even lower in our communities, but strong and building and working and very interested in being part of the history of the community. We have grants and funders that we've had from the beginning, Francis Fiedler Foundation, the Dree House, individuals in the community, Robinson Rentals, Tina Lifford, who is an actor, the Mammal Foundation, Dree House, Mellon, and a number of others that we're building with and talking to. I should mention the city of Evanston also as a funder. And one of the things that we do school tours, we have bus tours. Dino founded a tour that ECF has incorporated into their tours that he started in the 90s that takes you through Evanston, through the history of the Black community, which is, not simply the 5th Ward, though that's the biggest space that people recognize. 4th Ward, 8th Ward, 2nd Ward have communities. Dino started a publishing space so that we publish our own books. This latest one is about a cotillion called A Decade to Remember, which took place in Evanston and was part of a social club, of which Evanston had many in the Black community, some that were housed at the Emerson Street Y. And the cotillion was from 1960 to 1971. We have had a couple of programs, one at the Evanston Public Library, where about 8 or 9 boisterous ex-Debs came and really had a great time speaking about their experiences. Dino put about 14 years of work into this, collecting the stories and finally getting the trophy piece, which was a dress that someone wore in the 60s. So it's beautiful. And it is up at the library. If anyone would like to go, we have a small display case there that is really quite wonderful. We've also, just this last year, made a coloring book that features 20 Black Evanstonians, Lorraine Morton being one of them. And oh, there's somebody else who's one of them too. That would be Dino Robinson on his team. So, though it's aimed for K through third graders, it really is for everyone. And there are stories in here that speak to a little bit about each person. We are in the moment. I am actually kind of probably going to run out because I've got a big grant due on Monday. We have a number of other things. We've got the impact that we've made, which with a heritage program with the medallions that are in the sidewalk. One being, which is number one?
The Murray House on.
I thought that's the third.
I think this is number one. No,
The
actually,
picture
no,
is the
you're
third.
right. It's
about that?
Lorraine Morton.
Lorraine Morton's
Yes.
is first and second.
Edwin B. Jordan Jr.
Edwin B. Jourdain, which was the first collection we had. And the third is Maria Murray, who was the first Black recorded resident who came at 14 as an indentured servant working for the Vane family in 1855. So that's 317 Dempster, which is also the block where Ebenezer Church, which is the first Black church in Evanston, and then Second Baptist, which came along 3 weeks later.
Yep, about 3-4 weeks.
Right. Still the young twin, but also there. And they were founded right there on that same block of Dempster as well. So there was a presence that started east that moved west, not because by choice, but moved further west into downtown Evanston, and then finally mostly to the 5th Ward by the 1930s. Some of our collaborators, the BMRC, which is the Black Metropolis Research Consortium, Northwestern Mudlark Theater, Evanston History Center, as you can see, all of these spaces, and we're building. And it's a great time to be at Shorefront. I'll let you continue.
So, as we said, that we're growing. I like to kind of focus on a particular program that this particular commission played a significant role in throughout its development. And this was to honor the African-American community here in Evanston. And this started well before I got way into Shorefront, when it was still just like a fledgling. I'm just like learning about history, asking a lot of questions, and engaging the community in thought and discussion. And at the time, then Alderman Kent wanted to have some type of focus on some activity in the 5th Ward, honoring its legacy, and put together a committee called PITCH, Preserving Integrity Through Culture and History. And the key players in that were Mary McWilliams, Ann Earl, Pauline Williams, Joseph Kent. Those were the core people that really kind of started this look into the 5th Ward historical landmarks in that area. And the thought at the time was, let's develop a conservation district. Let's honor these homes for its architectural significance, its history, but there had to be a twist because of the already established policies in selecting the homes for historic preservation or recognition tend to be about architects and its longevity. And a lot of the houses in the 5th Ward did not meet that criteria. So they put a spin on it saying, well, we need to focus on the heritage of the families that live in that area. And so during that time, they developed a study, and Earl spent countless of hours, days, and years surveying practically every house in the 5th Ward, door by door, block by block, creating basically a checklist on a sheet of what type of architectural style, who lived there, a photograph. Had these binders and boxes full of information as time went on. Took photographs and slides of each of these. There was an opportunity in 1995 or 1996 when the conservation district, the National Trust for Historic Preservation came to Chicago for a conference. One of their tours comprised of Evanston's Fifth Ward area. And this photograph is a commemoration of a meeting at the Fleetwood Jourdain Center as part of a two-bus tour going through the entire Fifth Ward. Ann Earl conducted one of the bus tours. Me, brand new to doing it, conducted the other bus tour. So we carefully prepared this route and plan and historical context all throughout the city of Evanston and this day-long program going through there. And the end result, the community engagement involved the community. We started developing a newsletter that educated the community about the locale of where you are, your rich family history, legacy, and there are a lot of little pop-up ideas that started generating and a movement to create this some type of preservation district. What would that look like? In the end, there was a report that was filed that I think is actually in our archives here at the city. We also have it at Shorefront. And to kind of backtrack a little bit, we also have Ann Earl's, all her work at Shorefront now. And so that was important work that trying to replicate that now would be a yeoman's work there. So when I brought up this idea again with some type of historic marker, some type of recognition based on what Pitch did. And I did this throughout the many years in between with different concepts and ideas. We looked at kiosks, placemaking places, signage throughout the city of Evanston, and found out to be too costly, too cumbersome, and a lot of families probably would not want a big plaque mounted on their yard somewhere. And I don't think it would actually gel well with the city of Evanston's codes and other situations in there. So I had to put some things on pause from time to time. But it wasn't until about when Alderman Robin Simmons came into office where she ran up to me when I said, we need to have a preservation district on timeout. It's already been done. The reports are already there. But let's think of a creative way of doing this. And I invited back to the table Ann Earl and Mary McWilliams, who was part of the original pitch team, and presented an idea and a concept to bring an iteration of it back into play based on all the work they did. They loved the idea, and I put together a proposal and reached out to the Preservation Commission. And I thought I had to do like a big sales pitch. You guys were like on board, like, yeah, just come on in, let's talk about this. I'm like, okay. Came to the meeting, and before I could raise my hand and speak, they're like, okay, no, we're gonna do this. We have a subcommittee, and let's get to work. Wonderful team to work with. Thank you so much. So we did go through a mapping. We looked at all the sites. We tried to generate some areas. We thought there would be maybe a preservation district, but then we had to really think about something different. And because I didn't want to centralize everything in the Fifth Ward, to kind of share the history that the African community lived throughout all of Evanston, not just one particular point, but over the course of time, yes, we were moved to one point, but in its early history, there wasn't like a Black community or a Jewish community or German community. Everybody lived there. In the 1900 census, there was reported about 200 Black people living in the immediate downtown Evanston area. So that has changed a lot. There are businesses down there, and we want to recognize those spaces. So moving forward, we kind of went back and kind of made these large circles and started out sites and want to really hone down where we can work at something. I worked with this committee to develop a resolution. I've never written a resolution before, so this was my first stab at writing a resolution, and so many whereas.
Yeah.
Start every sentence with whereas.
So that was developed over the course of several months, and it was adopted by this, proposed by this commission and forwarded, and the city council unanimously approved it. And that started our heritage sites program after that. And we focused on the beginnings of it to identify 8 spaces that we could immediately identify and place markers there. And I wanted to have a good spread throughout the city of Evanston to really showcase that this is about something bigger than just like a small section of Evanston. And this is something that can educate, something that helps comply with city any city issues with streetscapes and other issues, and also complies with what maybe families may or may not want related to their homes. Not every family may have a historic place that doesn't necessarily want a plaque on their building or house, or fearful that any type of recognition will prevent them from doing things. So one of the things we really focus on this is that we want to honor the site, whether there's a building there or not, to really educate people what was once there and the importance of its legacy of that. This is where Second Baptist Church started. That's something important to remember where it started. Even if the building is not there or the site is not there. Actually, there's one building that was torn down recently in the last few years that was important to the Butler story. So I had some inspiration about what's a creative way of doing it. I remember walking down the sidewalk one day and looking down and seeing a bronze plaque embedded in the concrete of the sidewalk layer and the company that did that. I'm like, oh, that would be a good idea. And so I kind of did a quick internet search to see if like anything like this has been done before. And there are actually some places throughout the country that did these little markers embedded in stone or concrete at the location where, not here just in the United States, but also overseas in London, they have a lot of street markers that show the same things. And so I figured that, that might be a good solution. And worked with a local designer to come up with an idea of markers, and worked with a community-based ad hoc committee to help judge the markers and come up with the policies and procedures in identifying properties that the community can get involved in. So the final marker is this design. And here at this location, we're actually installing one of the markers at the Edwin B. Jordan Jr.'s home on Darrow Avenue. What's funny is that, the city of Evanston has been very helpful. They drill the holes in the concrete. I mark where it goes, they drill the holes, and then I insert the markers, which are geographic, what was the name of the company? They specialize in making these geographic place markers for, they usually have coordinates of a location, sometimes like the peak of the mountain or the border of between two countries. So we use that same system. They sold the drill bit and the right concrete to pour that in, but kind of like doing this in front of the family's properties. And before we do that, we notify them and send up a formal letter, a really fancy postcard, and a souvenir coin with this logo on it, indicating that. And so when we're drilling this hole, she came running out, this homeowner came running out. So what are you doing to my sidewalk? Well, it's the city sidewalk. So we're not trying to mess up your stuff, but we're just trying to honor this location. She knew the history of the house. And I said, well, we did send you something. It's like, oh yeah, my bad. I might not haven't looked at mail in about a month. And she went back inside, found a letter, came back out, really excited. And so she participated in the unveiling of the marker once we did it. Backing up a little bit, we also have the Evanston Heritage Sites website, which has an interactive map and history about each of those sites. So if you visit there, you'll click on a map location, it'll tell you a bit about it, and also map out where it is on the map. We hope to have, so this is like pretty much like the first and second phase of the whole project. And we hope to expand on that by creating wayfinding signage on public parks, like have one at Twiggs Park, and one maybe somewhere downtown Evanston somewhere where, and then one South Evanston, so that people can go there, see a listing of other maps, maybe a QR code, they can just like scan that, get to the website, you go to these different places. So it's meant to be self-discoverable, interactive in a way, and educational time, and honoring the legacies of the families that the human fit towards. So that is our program that we've been working on, that this commission has had a good helping hand in. Thank you very much for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent, thanks.
Does anyone?
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Yeah, if anybody has any questions,
Does anyone have any questions?
comments, or observations?
I was just wondering how people find, is it on the city's website as well? Like, besides walking by them, how could, find out about 8 sites.
Yes, and we have a very specific site for it, but City of Evanston, we have a link, at least a link to Shorefront.
Okay,
I think that will lead us to all the sites that.
It is on the, it's kind of cross-pollinated on the historic preservation programs
Right.
webpage. And it's towards the top too. It's about the third.
We also welcome any and all of you to come visit Shorefront.
Yeah, you really should.
Yeah, it's one thing to talk about, but once you're
Yeah.
in the space, it's a totally different experience. And I think it's important too, especially when we talk about growing our space, growing our footprint. It's kind of hard to like figure out like, oh, you guys just need an office. No, we need this room like twice the size just for the archives alone. Then we need a space at least this size just to process the archives. Because sometimes we have to spread out everything we have on all these tables and organize them in a way. We house them in ancestry folders. We have professional processors that come in, the degree processors that come in to create finding aids, store them properly, make recommendations, and find ways to make them utilize and discoverable outside for use.
But in addition to that, we're building programming, and so those spaces also need to be thought of as we look forward.
Did Shorefront participate at all in the artwork that's in the like little lounge space down the hallway? Is
Yes,
that the black art?
yes. So, yeah, the Food and Terrain Arts Guild disbanded about 10, 12 years ago, maybe a little bit more than that. The artwork that the organization collected was housed at the Food and Terrain Center. It was all taken down for different renovations and basically stored in the basement. Not really cared for. And, the founders kind of dissolved the whole organization. And then with transfers of new leadership, not necessarily familiar with that. When I sat on the Arts Council, the former director then, we discussed like what needs to be done with that. And that space there was kind of open. There was a chance to re-honor what the Terrain Arts Guild did and then hang those samples. There's more artwork. Those are the samples that we chose from.
I'm just concerned that they end
No,
up
it'll be
in a
here.
basement
It'll- no,
again,
it'll-
because if we're.
it's coming
to
leaving-
Shorefront.
Yeah,
so it's going to
we
Shorefront.
talked to the city.
And that's one thing, obviously, it is an important piece to worry about. And there's a reality that a lot of things disappear and moves, or as family members try to navigate things. I think we both live with these moments where we wake up and we think, what happened to that? What happened to that? Or someone would say, I was just ready to get rid of it. So the idea of being able to collect, preserve, and educate is with, talking to people daily, following through and knowing that we're getting that out.
And these are long-term relationships that we build, so they're not fly by night. We engage with people, throughout the entire time. Like Mr. Smith, I've been speaking with him for 30 years. and we share ideas and go back and forth. And just to keep people engaged and thinking about, like your family legacy, your legacy of what you've done, your institution, and where is the home. So you're not caught in a place where, this is important to us, but we have no way to prove how important it is with tangible items that demonstrate that. And I want to build, and we want to build a space where those items are housed so we can help share that for any type of movement that might be necessary for the community.
I'd like to say thank you to not just for the result of all these years of work, but the example that you've shown. You're right, I've known you for decades and been so unassuming and steady, and never a controversy, never a big deal, just constantly, getting it done.
Good footwork.
And obviously with your talent and intellect, your intelligence, you could have done some things out in the world, made a bunch of money or whatever, but you chose to be just a fantastic steward and citizen, and it's honorable, very honorable.
Thank you. I have to say, the work that we've done has been modeled across the country. So I speak across the country about community-based archives and its importance, and how local archives can help inform community members on the right moves to make, especially when we're talking about equity and diversity. Putting all those names out there and activities and history out there so you can paint a bigger picture. I just did a presentation at JRC just Saturday about the new digitized newspapers at the library that are made available. And partnered with the library, we had two collections at Shorefront digitized. And I put up an example of why discoverability is important. And I compared a topic line of the Emerson Street YMCA, using that phrase, and compared that with the Evanston Review hits between 1940 and 1959. There were 108 hits. Compared that with the Evanston News, that was the Black-owned newspaper for a period of 1941 to 1950, 9 years instead of 19 years. There was 345 hits. So when I went back and looked at the actual articles in the review, they're usually like a page of YMCA news, paragraph after paragraph, and maybe a short blurb of what's happening at the Emerson Street branch, with a very vague description. Ted Boyd will speak at the Christmas party. If you're a researcher, it doesn't tell you, But I went to the Evanston News-Ed, and the same topic, the entire page of entire biographies of people involved in the why, what they did, where they went to, what college they went to, what they're doing in their lives, what activities the YMCA Emerson Street branch is doing, where it was located, how many people showed up. That's activity. And without that dynamic, all of that information has been lost. And if you're looking or reviewing it as just a passing through, like, oh, okay, Emerson had 2 Ys, that's great. And there was no issue. Seeing the comparisons and how it's treated shows the disparity on the information that's available. So we want to make our stuff as discoverable as possible. In our work now, there are a lot of universities and archive spaces that always cite Shorefront as a model organization that needs to be replicated.
And it is in some places. We have a number of spaces around that have used our journal. I mean, everything except for maybe the title, and that's acceptable because it's not only acceptable, it's important if that's what people need to get going. So it's not about the ownership of something, it's about making sure that others can also have access.
So the Heritage Site program is still going. There are places that do not yet have the
Right.
little thing. I was there at the first 2.
Yes.
I don't know if you remember.
I did.
But anyway, it was very exciting, and it was nice for me to see everybody there getting excited about this stuff. So that's ongoing. What, like if you had a wish list of
Oh, let's look at it. Part 1, she has part 2.
of things that the commission could help you with now, like what would be at the top of that list? Like, so what can we do to help you?
Let me count the ways. Frankly, visiting Shorefront and really learning firsthand what we do is so important because, as we said, seeing it and knowing more about it and touching it and here and seeing the stories and what we've done is so important. We're starting to seek volunteers. Anyone wants to volunteer, any conversations that you can have about the work we do and understanding the importance of our history, of being able to build out with the heritage sites, of keeping in mind that we're looking to grow and build. If anyone wants to have a coffee and they want us to come speak, we're happy to do that. What else would you say? Also, we're always looking to build our archives. So we're looking to speak to people to grow our collection. And if it's not at Shorefront, that we want to know that it exists so that we can have a custodial piece of it, because it's knowing often, not necessarily just having it in our space.
I also think there's a great opportunity that Evanston may be missing in Shorefront. As I speak across the country with other entities, especially with the reparations work, First Repair brings in, I think in the last one, 75 representatives from other cities.
Once a year.
Every single one of them said, we wish we had a shorefront. These are city officials and representatives saying these things. If we had something like this and a pool of people doing this, we will get funding and a building and everything going. I think there are some opportunities for joint grant writing that falls within the mission and alignment with the city of Evanston and what it proposes to do in its own growth and development. That Shorefront fits right in there with that. And we've demonstrated our viability for the last 25 plus years. With every mission goal, we just rise to the occasion and work toward that. So I think there is a benefit that we have for the city of Evanston that I think can be expanded and strengthening the partnership.
Well, absolutely so. And let me build on that. And that is that when Shorefront was being built and everything was being collected, no one knew what was there. It was that 84-page report that Dino and Jenny Thompson wrote, and that showed what had been done over that many years. And frankly, in many of these unprocessed collections, there's more history that is as important that has not been discovered. So we can't imagine that just because reparations is the tip of everyone's tongues, rightfully so, that there isn't more there.
I think one thing that you recognized earlier than we did was that the ordinance is not very conducive to honoring and celebrating what you're talking about. And that's something that was very intentional when we wrote the new preservation plan, was wanting to address that. And so I think that's something that the commission could advance and move forward. I'm also thinking about when we lost the Butler Livery building.
Mm-hmm.
That was lost during a plan development process.
Yes.
The commission can list these heritage sites as eligible. They don't have to list them as designated. That would have allowed the commission to at least have a public process about what the significance of that building and that it shouldn't have been demolished. So that's another thing the commission could consider.
And to that point too, you helped us out with the honoring of the family-focused foster school building.
Yeah, yeah.
So that was a huge thing that, I've never had to present that way in front of a commission with the competing attorney who was degreed as an architectural attorney and preservationist. And here I am with my report, like, I'm gonna beat this fight. And I was able to find that angle of, this is how it benefits everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And the way we put it together is like, we're not saying you can't tear down the building or make these augmentations. We need you to understand how important this building is to the community. And there will be a process, if it does come to that point where it is torn down, you have to understand there's going to be a process to have that happen.
Yeah.
But we're not holding it back. If you want to sell this and somebody wants to add to it, yes, by all means do so. Just recognize the different architectural styles involved in this and try to incorporate that within your planning and have an opportunity for the community to have a say so. And I think with that argument and showing the building, the structure as it is, as the significant structure, not because of its architecture, but by the people it produced, the people who went through there, like Tina Lifford, like Bill Logan, and others, the Junior Mance, who was a well-known jazz musician, pianist,
And composer.
45 albums and taught in New York.
And we have his collection that we
Yes.
just received.
Yes, and Tina Lifford, I actually talked to Tina Lifford last week. I mean, actress in Queen Sugar. She was an actress in Queen Sugar, but she's been performing in over 100 movies for her career. But having to just call her on the phone and say, "Hey, how are you doing?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, I'm in between shoots. What do you need?"
No, not what do you need? What can I do
Yeah.
for you?
And
Right?
so, and able to demonstrate that, and actually showed a picture of Tina Lippert in her class picture at Foster School. Really kind of like drove it home that this is what this XT means to the community. And with that, we got the recognition, and
Yeah.
family-focused owners there actually kind of came around in the end and said, this is something that's beneficial to all of us.
And what's interesting is there were the properties torn down at Emerson and Jackson.
Mhm.
And one of the projects I got involved with, I partnered with rebuilding. And often what we see is that our spaces disappear. There was a barn there from 1885. And I suggested rather than just tearing it down, that perhaps it could be deconstructed and that we could save the wood that we could possibly use in the new Foster, or not the new Foster school, but the new Fifth Ward school. So they were able to save that wood and it's pretty pristine. They ran tests on it. It's all perfect. And the idea that it could go into the future so that it doesn't just disappear. Some of it was sold, but some of it's being retained. for
And there were some
that
artifacts that
purpose.
were found that we have at the archives.
Because at least to me, the heritage sites, it's beautiful, but I think it's, at least personally, I think it's a miss by the city that those are not Evanston landmarks. That those are not, that they don't rise to the same level of our other landmarks, because they should.
And there's a piece often that if it's not big and on the lake, it just doesn't get that same care or thought.
Right.
I mean, frankly, that just happens all the time. And that would be a wonderful thing to be able to change the perception and the ideas of what matters based on,
Right.
you know, I mean, we look at the old sanitarium, the first, it's falling down.
Yeah.
Basically, I mean, you know, and what can be done about that?
That's an extended conversation.
Asbury, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a conversation that's ongoing.
Yes.
That we've had. Is that building landmark?
It is.
That building is.
Yeah, it is.
I just had a question. You mentioned schools. Do you do, you said school tours? I think, do you do field trips with like District 65 or
All of
other?
it.
We've done a few, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
We've had, I think 1 year, we've had 500 students come to Shorefront.
great. I'm wondering, my kids are in 3 different schools, but I'm wondering.
We'll take off there.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, we also have, you know, we do it for kids, but we also, I just last week did a tour with Northwestern folks, but we do it. I have a program right now with high school students and recipients of reparations, and they all came on a bus and we did a tour. And this is a tour that Dino created in the 90s.
We can just contact you to, okay, got it. Okay.
So if we wanted to
I might
visit,
forward calls to him, but
if we wanted to visit, we would reach out to you and
absolutely.
organize that.
And I'll get back to you.
Thank you. Other comments, questions?
Just really quick, it's open like on demand, like as appointment only? Is that how it works?
Mostly, but we're looking to change that. As I said, we're looking to hire people and bring on, we've been open on Saturdays, but there's been a lot of, there's been a lot of activity. So.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Do you have a physical space that helps fetch you the storage space now at all?
At the church, we have everything there.
Okay, then, like, if you want, where's your wood store, for instance?
Oh, so the wood we were talking about,
Yeah.
that's at Rebuilding Exchange.
It's, they're giving you a space there, it's
That's-
safe.
So it's not ours per se, it belongs, it is something that we asked be done, but we don't own that wood. That they're holding on to it, and the city has asked that they keep a certain amount aside so that they can then use it for the project.
I believe that was one of the projects she talked about. Ina Gutierrez talked
Yeah.
about when she was here.
Yeah, I
She was
sought
one of
them
those
out,
members.
right, I reached out to them
Yep.
thinking that it would be a good partnership.
The city must have some small corner someplace.
Well, the
that would be
problem-
dedicated.
The problem is that the city yards, it's usually kept at city yards, but over a shift of time, things do happen. I've identified 15 years or 18 years ago, the Henry Butler livery stable keystone
Oh, really?
above the door was still there. And I literally take my business card on there saying, if something happens to us,
Yeah.
we want this piece.
Mm.
Every so often I would reach out and figure out what's going on with it and everything. But the last one I did with 2 administrations ago, there was a huge purge and they
Oh.
destroyed it.
Uh,
So even when we try to do this and we think there's a safe space, it's not always the case.
Mm.
And there are other elements of the Butler building that was also discarded as well. We did save a horse harness, a brittle hook, and a level that came out of the Butler building on Emerson Street. So we have that, but that's it.
And on that note, no. I mean, but this is what we face day in and day out. I don't know that there's really any way except or by getting a larger space that's ours, that we're not depending on a city or changing administrations or anything to depend on. So yes, you know, in addition to a space that we might,
Saying the city's not.
no, not, but you know, we have, you know, we have to be responsible for our histories, but we need the support of a space that we can say is ours. So certainly that's something that would be great in addition to what we're looking for in our growth, or a space for us for programming and all that, would be to have a space that was a storage space for big items like that. That, you know, we wouldn't want to necessarily move around, but that we could display on special occasions or during certain times. Thanks for asking.
Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you. Thank you.
Cannot tell you how excited I was. Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank you so much for having us.
Taking the time to come. We appreciate it.
If you have any questions, reach out to Laurice.
Yep.
You have both, yeah.
Good.
Thank you very much.
I'm gonna shut down and leave this meeting. So
There, it worked.
it worked, tech worked, so.
Thank you again.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you for being-
It is,
Mhm.
yeah.
Very,
That's for the newsletter, for sure. Okay, moving on to new business. The first item on the new business agenda item number A is the revised certificate of appropriateness application form. Kay, do you want to read this into the, Jeff, please read this into the record? Have some conversation.
Yes, review and adoption of a single revised certificate of appropriateness application for all scopes to replace the existing 3 applications currently for minor, major, and window and door replacement. And this falls under Commission's power, code section 283G.
Thank you. So, Thomas? Lost track of where you were.
The last place you sat.
Yeah, exactly. Did you want to take the lead talking about this, or how?
I mean, I can introduce it. I think this was something that Kate, that you brought up, or maybe Chair Dreller, you did, as something that could be considered. And as a practicing architect in Evanston, and something that we deal with multiple times a year, I thought, oh yeah, I think that could be a little bit better. So I put out feelers to other practicing architects.
You know, so it's a one-stop shop, and then there are those links too, if you want the FAQs or the, you know, examples of how to do a window diagram or whatever. That I think is a good addition.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, this is, I should back up this. One, it's unique that the commission can adopt these on their own. So there's a much more formal process. So unique to this commission, you can amend and adopt your own applications. You can choose what requirements applicants need to submit for you to review projects. This was last done 2 decades ago. So the world has changed pretty significantly since 2004. There are 3 applications that invariably the applicant chooses wrong, unless they are someone who comes through this process regularly. they will choose the minor work COA application because it's 1 page where the other one was like 9 pages. So they're like, oh, this is great. I'll just submit this. They very often don't even submit that correctly. And the information is not really useful. So I think one thing you did that was really wonderful was look at some other communities that do this regularly and see what they do. I don't think a single one had more than 1 application. And then they just have separate requirements based in the application on what the scope of work is. So not allowing the applicant to decide what's minor, what's major. That's what this group and what I determine. You know, if it gets sent to you or if it doesn't, you make those rules of circumstance for me to follow. So I think this is a much clearer process. It also aligns with the shift that the city made to have the entire permitting process done online. So maybe having 3 worked pretty well when someone came to the physical permit desk and they said, this is what I'm trying to do. Which application do I need? You hand it to them, you walk through how to fill it out. It doesn't work very well now. So now there's just 1 application. Someone types in their address, it automatically tags that it's in a district or a landmark. It says that a COA is required. They click the application. They fill out the application in the program. It tells them what documentation per scope of work. They have to check that they've submitted each one of those. And then it gets routed for review, and then I can send it to you or review it myself.
Awesome work.
Yeah.
I think the consolidation, I think the in-document links, and I think melding with the city's permit process is just a huge step forward into 2024.
Yeah.
So.
I have a couple of questions or comments. One is on under, can we zoom in a little bit? On page, that's page 9 in our packet. Under repair, replacement, flat work, the first where it says 1 copy of complete, on where it says detailed project narrative that includes how the proposal meets the binding review standards. Is that what is on the previous page? It's like a.
That's the
blank.
intention. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So can we go back to the previous page and see how that, so that says describe in detail the proposed activity and reason for requesting a certificate of appropriateness. There is nothing there about binding review standards.
Oh, sure. So you just want to cross-reference the 2.
Yeah, so, you know, a few years ago, we talked about wanting to be closer to the standards and keep our comments to the standards and stuff. And so one of the things that has happened that I've noticed is that we're asking applicants about the standards and they're standing there surprised that we are asking them about the standards because they're not like prepared for that. So I'm wondering if there's any way to kind of align what it says, detailed project narrative that includes with the way that section B sort of prompts people to be thinking about the standards. What are the standards?
Yeah.
That they, I mean, I'm not entirely sure how.
I think in the description, we can describe that we're asking them to write responses to the standards here. And then I think you can cross-reference here that we're talking about section B of the application.
Right. So there's those 2 different, I mean, for me, the most important thing was to make sure that if we were going to require binding review standards during our discussions and on the 3rd page that we say it.
Yeah.
Prompted here without having to get too wordy. But I do think that there could be some assistance for people to understand kind of what we mean by that.
Yeah.
Like, what are we expecting? It doesn't have to be within the context of this, but do we have something where if somebody were to call and say, well, what does this mean, binding review standards on section B of the COA?
Yeah, and some of this is tied pretty intimately to a process that we talked about a long time ago that has stalled out, but is now working its way through, is having a resource for homeowners that describes the preservation process, which was largely done, but supplementing that, for example, with kind of common language of what the standards mean, because they're confusing to people. So that's something that we've done and previous commissioners had helped us kind of summarize what the standards mean in a kind of layman's way.
Because this link takes you to just the standards.
Sure.
So I can imagine I mean, people who have done this a few times would understand, but I think that would be pretty overwhelming. You're sitting there going, wow, there's like
Mhm.
15 standards and I have to respond to all of those. So maybe just kind of massaging that,
Sure.
that prompt might be helpful. And then it's said again under replacement of windows. It's probably said a couple of different
I
times.
think
This
it is.
detailed project narrative that includes how the proposal reads through.
Mhm.
So that was one question. And then the other thing, and I don't know whether this is me or whether other people like this too, but we have had going forward, I think, an expectation that the existing and the proposed drawings were going to be on the same page so that we didn't have to scroll back and
Mhm.
forth. And that was specifically indicated at some point in the previous COA, I thought. And I did not find that here. So I am wondering if it was intentionally taken out,
I don't
in
think
which
so.
case that's okay.
No, I don't think it was.
Okay, is that something, am I the only person that likes to have the existing proposed next to each other?
Yeah, having them side by
Yeah.
side.
Okay, all right, okay,
Yeah.
you
On the
know,
same sheet.
you're by yourself looking at this and you're going,
Yeah.
so
Sometimes I open 2 PDFs so that I can.
it's really, and you know, I just think if they know in advance in the form, so pages 10, it says under drawings that accurately indicate existing conditions and all proposed changes and areas of new work. So the first bullet point after that, it says to scale existing and proposed site plan. Maybe somewhere in there, add something about grouped, like existing and proposed grouped together on the same page.
If you look at the last bullet point on page 9, I think you got it. The last black bullet.
Right, yes. To scale existing proposed elevation section drawings presented side by side on the same sheet. Yay.
Yeah.
Yes. So if that could just, if perhaps
Yeah.
someone, probably I'm volunteering you here, to go through this and just make sure that where it needs to say presented side by side wherever we're talking about existing and proposed elevation of section drawings.
I agree with everything you're saying, but in the past, there's been some that have come before us that hasn't stuck strictly
Yeah,
to that.
yeah.
And I guess what I'd like to know is that will staff still have some leeway to allow that in certain cases when it's really advantageous to get one thing on a sheet and not cut the scale down in half in order to do that?
I think that that's a good question. I mean,
Like a site plan or something.
It might be, I think that
Scale.
I do want the clause in there and I want to encourage that as much as possible. I'm hoping that like an application won't get rejected if in some cases, there's
Yeah.
a better way to show them on separate sheets.
maybe just say if possible.
So it sounds like
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
You know, for a long time now, we've had a pre-review
right.
where a couple of commissioners have looked at the stuff that comes in. And it's an opportunity to say this is incomplete, or there's a requirement that you know, for a drawing that you haven't shown us. But I think that along with that review, the clarity that's provided by what you're talking about, which is the juxtaposition of drawings and the ability to read them for change and for difference, is something that, you know, if it's unclear in the presentation, then I think it becomes our obligation to give that to the person submitting as feedback before they send in their final, their final materials.
I have to say that in pre-review, almost always, 75% of the time, that is one of the comments.
Yeah.
Almost always.
Yeah.
For those of us who have done a lot of pre-review here, it's a constant thing. So that's why,
I mean, how do we make it clearer in a document like this? Does there need to be just a section that says requirements for drawings, which doesn't just list the kinds of drawings that need to be there, but also the way they need to be formatted and the informational content that we're looking for from those drawings? And then if they still can't get it right, you know.
So we have, For example, we've used a best practice submission for window replacement because it's something that is very common. More times than not, it's done wrong and it's impossible to understand what's happening. There may be an excellent example that's occurred that we could ask that architect if that can be used as a best practice submission that they could just reference, this is what's desired ideally.
Yeah, I think the documents they download could certainly have examples.
Yeah.
I think there also could be a statement that if in fact the final materials submitted do not address all of this stuff, that the application will not be reviewed.
Yeah, and there's a statement to that in the beginning now on the front page. Because that's another thing this process is trying to do is we get a lot of incomplete applications currently. So trying to understand why that's occurring, one, it's because they don't know which application, or that it's just a little too cumbersome, or some things are unnecessary and they kind of lose steam and just do whatever they want at the end of the day. So I'm hoping some of that is addressed just by having a simpler application, but I think having some examples is wonderful. Yeah, wonderful.
It makes, this is probably cumbersome and I don't think anybody's going to do it, but would it make sense in the pre-review process to tell people which commissioner is pre-reviewing their material, so that when it comes back with a statement saying you're missing this or this is unclear, they have somebody they can actually call and speak to and get help from in terms of completing a submission? I mean, I'd be willing to do that.
I think as long as that isn't happening just between them and you, like if that's a meeting you're a representative of this standing subcommittee and I'm there and we're just talking about submission requirements. I think.
Well, then you do it.
Or
He does it now.
Yeah.
So he takes all of our comments and compiles them into one. So for those of you who are new, some pre-review occurs. Kate gets the applications a few weeks before the meeting. Then it goes to the pre-review committee, and that committee can change or it can stay the same. It's sort of we need to actually have that sign up for 2024. So we'll have a sign up for 2024 for you guys, but it's 3 people. And we all take a look at it over a day or two, send our comments to Cade. He compiles them and sends them on to the applicant. And then the applicant hopefully does the thing that they're supposed to do, which almost always includes side-by-side drawings. Because usually it's just all the plans or all the whatever. And so it has to be reorganized. And then that material comes to us. The pre-review committee is not giving any indication about whether it'll pass or whether it'll get the COA or not. It's literally just reviewing it for completeness. Those of you who have done pre-review, did I summarize that? Okay.
Did we, in this whole redesigning of the application, take like the common things, like you said, the side by side, are there any other like common comments? Like if there's a new material that commissioners haven't seen, like I think it's in here.
Yeah,
providing
kind of
example.
for sure. Yeah, I mean, the other thing that's very common is just not providing material annotations, not providing dimensions. Those are very common.
That's on here though.
Yeah.
Annotating. I was looking for that too.
Yeah,
somewhere here.
it's on.
Yeah. Okay.
Jumping back to like the best practices thing, I remember bringing this up in a few meetings ago, and the response was more like, that is not cogent with, our designs with review standards. These would be like each sort of project is looked at within its own context. Like obviously for windows, we sort of have this maybe unwritten rule that like it's, basically it's aluminum clad, or ideally it's, that's the least sort of historically representative version of a window that will allow for places that are under our purview. Like, are there other pieces? Are there other, is there that for garage doors, for example? Is that, or like, are there other parts of home that, have best practices that your administrative standard uses?
So there's,
not?
I think even the window replacement best practice submission, it's looking at provided documentation it's not looking at if the window itself is appropriate or not. It's just saying this is the kind of documentation we want.
Okay.
But to your point, what you're talking about is there is a separate set of window replacement guidelines that the commission adopted many, many years ago. And the commission is free to adopt as many guidelines for different scopes of work as they choose. But I think to your point, it works. I think it's better to have a set guideline for something like windows, where if you're talking about additions or new construction, there's
Sure,
probably
something that's
no,
complex and that really changes the character.
yeah, it's a little more complicated.
So to my question, are there other pieces other than that are similar to windows in any way?
That you could do.
That we do.
No, we don't have anything. Solar panels, I guess, are the only, yeah, solar panels.
What is, oh, sorry, go ahead.
So are there fact sheets that are available for each of these topics? It sounds like you're very familiar with it. I mean, and there's probably what, 10, 12, 15 of them?
This is part of this, what we called the heritage design resource manual or something that's been in process for a long time, but it basically breaks down common scopes of work that common alterations, common repairs someone would do their house. It explains the preservation perspective, why it's important, common issues to avoid, documentation that's provided. So the idea is there in concept. It's just something that hasn't crossed the finish line.
Well, I'd like to take that up a notch. If I'm, change the brakes on my truck, I go to YouTube. And this guy tells me, hey, it's got a baseball cap on backwards and refinish and everything else. And he tells me step by step how change the brakes on the truck.
Yeah, this is something that Sarah and I have talked about because it's relatively easy now. I mean, theoretically, I could record myself on Zoom
You know what?
and post these things on.
I don't know how many times we talked about that.
They'd be YouTubing you from all
Well,
over.
what we talked about it, I think, was a conversation between
Oh, sure,
us.
yeah.
And then that would go on YouTube as kind of like some thoughts about
Yeah.
what do we expect and.
Be
whatnot.
hyperlinked right into.
Honestly, I think that's great.
Yeah, same.
That brings up the issue, and it comes up with, I think, clearly with windows, is that there are some things that have to do with intent that might be really spelled out. For instance, I don't know about all of you, but I would have no problem telling an applicant who is changing the windows on a historic home that if they're divided light windows and they're planning to replace them with windows which are single panes of glass, that will be an enormous issue because it changes the apparent scale of the house. I think you could say this, and then the next really common thing that we get is siding, but to finish the windows, my issue is, for instance, nobody wants to paint windows ever again. So everybody wants to do clad windows. And the reality for me is that when you take 4 or 5 steps away from a house, you can't tell whether you're looking at a clad window or a wood window that's been painted. With both cladding and wood windows, there's a variety of exterior profiles that are available. And I think that things like that could be explained to people in terms of what we're just going to say absolutely no to. The same thing, I'm more concerned with the replacement of siding with the issue of the scale of the siding that's being replaced than I am with whether they're doing it with planks on cedar, hardy board, which is a cement product, or AZAC, which is PVC. There are, in fact, systems of replacement where the siding is fabulous. You look at it and you can't tell but you're not looking at Victorian, pine siding that's been painted a number of times. But generally the soffitting material, the corner pieces, the trim pieces for window that come with some of those systems are really dreadful. And I think to point out to people that we're not looking for, you have to rebuild the window. It's really, important that, that we have the original wood from the cross back in the house, but that we're looking for, something that brings the house up to standards for maintenance, for code, and replicates the appearance, scale, and quality of the original structure. Sorry, I'm going on the original one.
But isn't that like a conversation between the homeowner and the architect?
Should be.
I mean, I hate to think that we.
No idea, you know how many bad doctors there are out there? Well, think of,
For sure.
either, we belong to a profession that has
Yeah.
gross incompetence, or people that don't care, or people that don't know any better. But how else do you explain all of the really disastrously ugly buildings out there?
But if that came to me, that's not something I want to lay on the homeowner, because I'm looking at this architect and going, are you sure that you're in the right business?
It's an offer. Yeah, it's some homeowners that
The other problem that I say this as an architect.
Yeah.
Is that like everything else in the world, you get what you pay for. Somebody who's gonna spend, 3 days making a drawing for how to put a new front porch on your house and charge you a couple $100 is not gonna do the same quality of work as a really good architect who may charge you a few thousand for the same piece of work. But you're going to get something that's categorically different. The problem is you cannot say to somebody, the thing your architect presented is a piece of shit, fire and go hire somebody.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Stuart.
Thank you so
yeah.
much. That is a perspective. I'm new to this kind of thing. It's something that, I'm glad to hear that.
All right. So we were talking about the application form. And I think that your comments.
What should go in it?
Yes, and what should go in it. And I think that for me, the big takeaway from this conversation is that we feel that the applicants need more guidance than they get in a small form. But how to actually deliver that is another thing. Are we happy with the form? Or at least in the.
Yeah, I have a
something
comment. Yeah, so we talked about this a couple months ago, and then we started talking about revising the form as a result of this, but we're talking about preserve 2040 and landscape, and a lot of the old form, the old COA talks about landscape retention. I just searched landscape and it comes up a couple of times in those old forms, but nothing on the new form. And I know that's one of our goals is to encourage retention of landscape, but we have no mention of landscaping in this new form. I think we need to alert the owners so that when they come, we want to know if they're making any dramatic changes so we can be aware of it when we're reviewing the application. And then we want them to know that's something it's one of our standards too, that a little known standard.
So, yeah, that's.
We don't even have a tree ordinance.
That's why it was
to keep people from taking down huge old trees because they want to put a porch next to their kitchen.
Yeah, so it's a strange because there are standards that talk about land altering activity, standards that talk about retaining significant environmental features. But then inevitably the issue is that you don't need a permit to do those activities. And because you don't need a permit to conduct those activities, you don't need a certificate of appropriateness. Now, if somebody applies for a larger project and it involves, it's an addition and they're taking down a 300-year-old oak tree or something, theoretically, the commission could enforce those standards, and they could deny the application because they are destroying significant environmental features.
But they
And
can
it's-
cut down the tree anyway.
So then the problem is that they could, yes, the conundrum is they could go back, cut the tree down without a permit, come back in front of the commission and say there isn't anything there, there's nothing there. So it is a conundrum. I thought, and it's a good point, because I did think about putting in, for example, on the site plan to label the location of significant trees, to try to align that with some of the language that is in the tree preservation ordinance. The only reason it wasn't in there now is because that's not really enforceable, but it's not a bad.
But we could still encourage it. Like you said, this commission started without any enforcement
Sure.
requirement. We were, right?
Yeah.
Originally, it was just like to encourage people.
Persuasive
So
arguments.
we could just start with labeling it and talking about it and maybe influence them rather than like mandate it.
Sure.
That could be a start without having a tree ordinance.
It's a little subversive, but honestly, it's a good, I mean, like, you can make people think something that, you know,
Well, we could say, you can't replace this 300-year-old tree with like 10 new ones that are like 5 foot tall. Like, it doesn't work
Well,
like that.
there are ordinances that actually allow you to take down trees up to a certain caliber and then require you to replace them in kind with a greater number of trees of smaller caliber that would equal it. The problem is that we need a tree ordinance because every single architect knows.
Lake Forest already has.
Can I tell you guys something? Every single architect knows that if there's a tree they don't want there and they dig the foundation within a few feet of it, or even in some species cases within the drip lines of the tree won't be there in 2 years. It'll die.
Well, we're just gonna have to wait for a Mr. T incident in Evanston.
So in terms of the form, I'm playing bad guy here. Charles,
Okay,
did you
I'm
want
gonna
to?
make one last. Because, ultimately, we're talking about a historic district, not specifically a historic building or a site. So if a landscape is a major component of the district, it seems that we would want to say something about that. If it promotes the quality of the district or degrades the quality of the district, it's something that we might be able to finesse.
I mean, I think at least aligning some of the language in the form with what is anticipated for when the tree preservation ordinance takes effect makes a lot of sense to me.
And I think with, the fence section with any of the additions, anything where there is actual physical work going on, can we require photographs of those existing trees or at least documentation on the survey or site plan? To understand the real full impact, if we can't see it all from the public way.
One thing to just be careful about in the form, if I'm reading that as an architect, the first thing that I'm gonna think of is, do I need to hire an arborist? Or is that like me with my laser, like to that corner, it's about this far, I measure at this? Just so however we document it, it's clear so that the person knows exactly what you mean.
We require a current plat of survey. And for not very much more, most surveyors will locate existing trees on a piece of property and actually label the diameter. So it might just be a matter of adding verbiage that says, current plats of survey submitted along with applications shall show existing trees and their diameter as they currently exist on the property.
If the addition is over 150 square feet, you have to have topography shot by a surveyor. So that has to happen anyway. So it's just, that's more of a building permit thing, but it's something that already exists. So you could just kind of piggyback on that, and it would be more for larger construction, but you would be just attaching to some other requirement.
I mean, with the tree ordinance that is going into effect in June or July, I believe, that's.
Has some of these requirements that we're talking about, I think my instincts are that the language should mirror whatever that language is so that there's consistency.
Yeah.
As long as that's, what.
But to that
You're getting
end,
the
I
right
think
information.
it'd be useful to have college when she gets back, come to speak to us, to sort of like work with them a little bit, like have a better understanding, to give you a presentation of like what this looks like. Because this is new for the city and we want to try to, that's what they're doing. This is like
We can certainly add that.
So you guys, it's working out creative, is doing a whole day seminar on this very topic, on how to apply tree ordinance and how to write a description of the person's job. And I've signed up for it. So,
When is it? Do you know off the top of your head?
it's, it may be May 11th.
It's okay.
Working out creative.
Okay,
And it's, how to manage a tree, urban tree or management ordinance thing.
well, we'll find it. So, are there other comments on the form?
I have a couple of little things that I don't know. It's here. To be honest, I wasn't sure what that term flat work referred to, so I was hoping to have that clarified. Flat work in the very first section there.
Yeah, we could address that. That's basically any sidewalk, yeah.
So hardscape.
The hardscape would be fine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So if we're doing hardscape in there, then would that be the opportunity to add landscape as well in that section, or is that, you talk about.
It's not a unique scope of work. That's just like, those considerations would be for any scope. I think the landscape conversation would just fall under sub-bullet under the scopes of work that have the potential to impact.
Okay,
What percentage of COAs are submitted to you by professionals versus like homeowners? I mean, just roughly.
I think it depends your definition on professionals, but
Sure.
I think that.
No,
I didn't mean that in a snarky way. I meant, licensed architects versus contractors.
just not.
Yeah, I don't know.
So you're including
Yeah.
contractors?
Yeah,
I would say, what I've seen, 90.
Yeah, I would say it's probably.
okay, I didn't notice that.
Yeah.
I mean, I've done them for my own home, so
Yeah.
I was just curious, like, are the people doing?
Yeah.
Of the people, of the ones that come
No, either
here.
architects,
Yeah.
either licensed.
Is that what you're
architects or
asking?
licensed
No, even,
Oh, it's okay. So his question had to do with including administrative review.
yeah.
How many non-professional people are using this form? That's the question.
Yes.
Like, are homeowners really doing it?
Yeah, largely, I would say the only one that's common for a homeowner to do on their own is maybe fence.
Yeah.
garage. Sometimes it's a garage.
Yeah, we've had rare occasions of, that one on Hinman where the homeowner tried to design the whole house himself.
Well,
You
yeah,
still working on it?
It is still
yeah,
under
and
construction.
it's.
But the
You're
audience.
doing a good job.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree on every
I'm
time.
rooting.
So the audience for this is primarily professionals
Yeah.
for this form. Okay, Beth, you had some other
I
stuff.
have some other little edits that I can send to.
Just not- it's
Yeah,
mostly like
I
language.
feel like they're more edits than discussion items. Maybe the only discussion item is, I think in the page page 4, for the demolitions, should we require a statement referring to the potential for archaeological findings and a commitment to adhering to the standards? I know that this is kind of becoming a little bit more of a talking topic among the commission right now. And I don't see anything referring to that standard necessarily in the COA, but specifically like for a demolition project, should there be a little nudge in there that's saying what we would like to see in that packet of information that would come and be part of the COA?
I would second.
How would that work out?
Are you talking about the,
Deconstruction?
construction, or you're
no.
talking about excavation?
Yeah, exactly, like
Excavation.
demolition, where
Excavation is
you're
a
like
huge
going
thing
through the
now. Yeah,
foundations,
yeah.
you're.
You
You're
start
really
to see a
good.
hole, you don't know what you can find. Although,
So
although in
reconstruction
Rome,
even, yeah.
you know, every single time they excavate, they find something and the job stops for a year.
And I guess is
Same
the
on the
C,
floor,
is there a
yeah.
chance within the COA to kind of prompt the architect or homeowner or property owner to remind them, hey, we have as one of our standards at this archaeological responsibility. Should we insert that into the actual COA form as a reminder, basically?
You know, one thing that could happen, and I don't know whether this is advisable or not, is to actually ask them to have a plan. What happens if you find something?
Yeah.
Just a little, I mean, it could be a one sentence statement. Who are you going to call?
Or do we tell
Or-
them?
They're gonna ask you who they should call.
We
It's
tell
all
them.
about a resource, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean.
Yeah, that language is pretty common. I mean, that language is pretty common about what happens in instances of inadvertent discovery, what do you do? And maybe just asking them to acknowledge that they've read
I
it.
think like, yeah,
Yeah,
just
well,
that
there you go.
acknowledgement.
There's a statement and then
Right.
we have to.
Evaluate these things that are being sent to us based on a set of standards. And how do you evaluate something that somebody might find when they dig a hole? You know?
I think the question though is like on the COA, is it on the
Urban
application,
information.
if we could have, you know, owner acknowledges the potential for additional investigatory work should an object or.
So they check a
setting be
box and they
discovered.
sign underneath
And
the
they sign
box.
it and we have it, yep.
I think that's a good.
Just so
I
it's
would
like
agree.
brought to the forefront rather than, I
Yep.
honestly think it's like 10 out of 11 on our new construction guidelines, I
Yeah, but
or
we have-
something. Like, it's just so buried right now
Right.
that is
But
there a
but to
chance?
Stuart's
to-
point, I mean, we can't, we almost always say that there's, that it meets that standard because we don't know what's
Mm-hmm.
under there. So I think what John was saying is just having something that is, you want to say it again?
What did you say?
A
It's a,
statement, yeah.
it's a statement where you check the box and you initial it or sign below that box acknowledging that you'll
Acknowledge.
bring that to somebody's attention.
Yeah.
Of course, it's a gray area and you know, is that a dog bone? I don't know. I mean, it's,
Totally.
It's a gray area, but I can imagine it being a very black and white area at some point in our future.
Sure.
Yep,
And to acknowledge, well, from what Dean, you said Dino. If you dig up something, and that certain areas are probably more prone to have something like that occur than other
Yeah.
areas. Hey, funny, it's just like the landscape thing, we are putting our toe into something. And it's something we're gonna have to figure out through the future some way, but
but the statement and the box is a starting
Yeah.
point.
yep, yeah, let's do
That
it.
addresses what I'm trying to get to.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I'd speak to this as an archaeologist.
Here we go.
That when you find something under the ground, it's intrinsically no different than if you find something above the ground. Everybody in this room is very used to the idea that when you knock a wall down or when you do something to a house, you might find something unanticipated within the walls or under the floorboards or in some other way. So this notion that what's under the ground is somehow mysterious and we can't deal with it, as opposed to what's above the ground, is a distinction I think we should question.
Yeah.
I think the statement.
I
should-
like John's suggestion, but I somehow keep thinking that box and saying that you will contact so-and-so immediately should go with on the application for building permit, not on the application for us.
That should probably go on both.
Yeah.
Interesting, yeah.
so that is-
Maybe in
Huh.
the box on the preservation form, one or two sentences of like what might be, I don't know if it's examples, but you know, sometimes when you're doing demolition work or excavation work, items of significant historical significance may be discovered. And I agree to blah, blah, blah.
Mhm.
You know, Dino already told us about, he described all the things he collected when they tore down the Butler building. So it's just, I think that it's something, it's, I take seriously. It's something.
Okay,
So Chair Dorella, just a couple other questions.
Yes, oh, I'm sorry.
One, the issue with the landscape, do we still have these checklists as part of the application?
That
form?
wasn't, no. we-
Those are all, okay,
we're gonna-
because I was gonna say we could add, a landscape box in here as to flag it, we are gonna be doing some kind of landscape work, but that area is gone now, okay?
Mhm.
And then the last comment I have is that question of the existing and proposed on the
Yeah.
same page
Yeah.
and showing examples and I'm thinking just one sheet or even half of a sheet that showed a landscape formatted drawing sheet, project name, firm name, existing, proposed, just sample form. That alone will probably like flag a lot of people. Oh, this is how they like.
Yeah.
Simple template.
Yeah, that's fine.
I just wanted to say one thing too about the windows. I hate to bring it back to that, but I recently replaced some, and even though I sat on the commission, I was actually very nervous replacing them and didn't really know because we don't review them often because it is administratively reviewed. So I would have loved like something that did talk about maybe aluminum clad is generally approved or whatever. Like I didn't really know. I knew who to call, of course, but I didn't really know what we accepted in an administrative review situation.
It's largely what this document is intended for. Which we're trying to somewhat replicate, but it talks about, for example, common issues to avoid. Insert pocket installations, those are really common. So we do have something similar to that, but
Yeah.
you know, some of these things are, they're not in the application, right? So that's part of the intent here is to make it more readily available. So when someone looks down here, they're like, oh, here's additional information. It's on a form that they're required to look
Yeah.
at.
Right.
Instead of dig through the website to try to
Right.
find something that's buried.
Should you put the box at the top at the beginning of the form? So that they have those resources as they are filling out the form,
Sure.
in case
Yeah.
someone doesn't go read the whole thing before.
Sure.
I apologize for being too specific, but to be specific, like 1020 Lakeshore Boulevard. It's the largest Georgian style home right across from Lee Street Beach. Like they replaced some windows I think, 2 years ago with simulated divided lights. And like I'm like, why? How did that like when would that be administratively allowed? Especially a house of that stature and that location, and like houses with much less historical, weight. People go to the lengths of having to create like basically custom wood windows, and like as
Without being reviewed.
Okay, getting back to the form. So I've heard a bunch of little changes. So I am wondering if we feel comfortable voting on this tonight, or if we want to continue it, let all these changes be made, have a look at this again, and then vote on it, but have a much reduced conversation in May. Or if you all feel like, even though we have lots of changes that, the scope of them is such that you feel comfortable going ahead and voting. So I'm just sort of taking a straw poll. So I don't want to do a vote and have it be a no.
I feel comfortable voting for it right now. I feel like the proof is in the pudding. We're in the right direction. It's very thoughtful.
Okay.
Everyone's had a chance to put their imprimatur on it. I think.
So does everyone feel comfortable? You don't feel like you need to see it again? Or
I'd rather see it again.
You want to see?
I first place.
So
Yeah.
what does it mean if you vote for it now? Because it's an enormous improvement over what we
Yeah,
had
it is.
before.
For sure.
Does that mean that the suggestions that were made tonight, which I think are worthy of being incorporated, will never be happened?
No, I think we would just have
Yeah, they
we
would
would
be,
vote on it
yeah.
with that as, go through it the way we always, when we vote, we delineate all the different things that we would do.
So it'd be a motion to approve with the
following.
following, or with the changes that
Yep.
were suggested, all the changes that were
Yep.
suggested in
Yep.
today's meeting.
And so the question is whether we want to go ahead and vote on it, or if we want to see the form again.
I would vote for it now, considering that it will be a living document. This isn't, it's going to evolve over time, particularly in response to how it gets used in the rollout. I think
Well, if anyone has any further questions, it would have to come for vote again and be changed again. So it might be better to just go ahead and vote on it once. But if you all, I don't want to take this away if somebody wants to see it again.
Yes, changes.
Yes, that's the way we would
Do
do
we
it.
have a record of those?
Yep.
Okay.
You prefer to wait?
I'm
I'm hearing mixed here.
If we
have to
wait,
Vote on every change that comes in the future.
Well, we haven't changed in 24 years.
Yeah.
it's not a very lively living document. How about this? How about if everybody wants to shoot us your thoughts? Please do us this favor when we send out the draft before the meeting, you read it. So any comments we get before, so when we sit down here, it's done.
That sounds good to
Yeah.
me. Well, it'll be old business at that point, right? So it would be at the top of the agenda.
There we
All right.
Yeah.
And
go.
that
Thanks,
case-
everybody, for your suggestions.
Did you have anything more you wanted to say?
My one comment is that last month I was able to attend a online seminar from the National Park Service, and they this topic of material selection and replacements, it's a changing thing, and the National Park Service just updated their technical brief on replacement materials on historic properties. It was great. It was really informative. If nothing else, just look up the technical brief for replacement materials. It's a great synopsis and reference for us. And so, yeah, I just kind of wanted to plug that just because, they're thinking the same things as we are and and they talked about siding. It was really interesting though. They have an example in the technical brief that is the preservation brief, sorry. They actually like having one elevation of like the original siding and then the other elevation that's like a different dimension right there. And they're like, because you can see that it's a replacement. And I was like, all right,
Well,
that's a little different than the way we've been
That's just
thinking as a group.
So-
It's just
Secretary of the
interesting.
Interior standards for additions and alterations to historic buildings, which goes back to the sixties. Asks specifically that anything you do be clearly differentiated. In that period of time, I think most architects have decided that they think that's not such a wonderful idea. And that it has produced house additions that look like they fell out of the sky and landed on the poor house, or couldn't hit the brakes in time before they slammed into the side of it. So
Thank you very much.
there's a whole kind of idea that has changed, and aesthetically, the sort of continuity of surfaces in a building is important.
And I think the Evanston Commission
Yeah.
has felt the same way. It was just interesting to see the difference. So it's a great resource, everybody.
Okay.
It's an ongoing. it's an
Yeah.
ongoing
Can you
It
resend that
is.
email? You had,
So,
you had informed, if you can just resend it, 'cause the link will be in.
Yeah.
I'll make sure you got it.
okay. We were about to decide that we're going to continue. Can you remind me what the process is for continuing something? Do we have to
Same
vote
as
on that?
vote, just motion to continue, second. Yeah.
Go ahead. Yes, please.
I'll
do.
make a motion that we continue the application. Please submit all your comments to Thomas and Kate before the meeting, and please read the document so that we can vote and approve it at the May meeting.
I second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, opposed? Abstain? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Now, if you turn over, we see all the other things we have on our agenda tonight. The item B is Cultural Heritage Awards Program. Kate, did you want to read that into the record and then we can talk about it? Please.
Item B, Cultural Heritage Awards Program, review and adoption of a reimagined awards program that expands beyond built heritage and physical project design in order to better represent additional historic and heritage preservation themes, including living heritage, the arts, intangible cultural heritage, and less tangible stories and histories. The commission is empowered to move this forward under Code Section 283G21, and this aligns with Preserve 2040 Initiative 4.15.
Beth, I know this originated, you had a strong thought. Do you want to say a few words about this? How do you want to, or Kate, do you prefer Kate to introduce it?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, sure, go ahead.
So I think there was some background in the document itself, but the commission has had an awards program since the 1980s. It's been largely very successful, and it really only came into question, I think, maybe 4 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago. But as preservation is evolving to identify and celebrate more than just physical heritage and architectural heritage, it seems like an opportunity for the Preservation Awards program to align with that as well. I think a more kind of liberal reading of the power and responsibility the commission has for this is to confer recognition on just historic preservation efforts is what it says. And I think that can be interpreted very broadly to include not only built heritage, but living heritage, people, stories. A really wonderful example that I didn't think of until we had this meeting is being able to recognize and celebrate and confer an award on someone like Dino and Shorefront for the efforts that they're doing, because no process really exists like that currently. And there's many examples of something like that. The History Center's Mother's Day House Walk that they've been doing for 50 years. Mm-hmm. That's another program that's probably largely deserving that wouldn't fall under the previous program. And then through this, I should back up a little bit. This is in Preserve 2040 as a kind of low priority initiative far out in the future. The initiative talks about stopping the current awards program and reimagining it. The existing awards program stopped really abruptly when COVID happened, and it just never got rebooted. And so it seems, even because of that, it's something that I get many calls on a monthly basis. When are the awards program? When can I submit? There's a lot of interest in it. I've also had conversations with
From what kinds of people?
architects, homeowners. I mean, a lot of homeowners are really proud of the investments that they've made and the work that they've done, and the commitment to doing something that meets the standards where other people don't necessarily have to meet those same standards. I've also had a lot of conversations recently with the city's arts coordinator, and I will be giving a presentation about this to the Arts Council about finding ways to recognize more artistic pursuits that are associated with the city's cultural heritage. And you'll see that here. And what we did, I'll run through it quickly, is really the purpose of this. One is just to promote best practices in historic preservation and best practices broadly. Celebrate those who embody, safeguard, or advance significant themes within the broader field of historic preservation and heritage conservation. So instead of specific mediums of work, these are more themes that we are conferring recognition on. Awards programs are really important to just educate and increase awareness and appreciation for cultural heritage. So one thing an awards program does that's really effective, especially if it's beyond built heritage, is it's the public identifying and nominating things that are significant to them. Even if they've been nominated, you're creating this registry of significant things that are significant to the citizens of Evanston. I think that's important. And then really just to encourage future excellence through the power of example. And I think that's true too, is like you are conferring recognition on someone for something they've done that's very exemplary. And they are setting an example for someone to hopefully follow or build upon in the future. So the award categories there's 3. One is called the Cultural Ambassador Award. This is before there was a award that was called the Preservationist of the Year or Project of the Year Award. It's really just the highest form of recognition. So if someone is doing something that it's just exceeding expectations, that's what the Cultural Ambassador Award would be. The other 2 are just recognizing either individual achievements or group achievements. And then the themes themselves, there are many, and they're very broad intentionally. So conferring recognition on research. So this is projects which identify, interpret, and help safeguard the city's diverse cultural heritage or improve access, enjoyment, or understanding of the city's heritage assets. Education and advocacy, achievements or projects which foster the transfer of knowledge and traditions, build local awareness and capacity, or expand skills and crafts related to the enhancement and enjoyment of the city's cultural heritage. Equity, achievements or projects which foster social connection, identify less tangible histories, strengthen multicultural dialogue and understanding, nurture a sense of place, celebrate diversity and lesser acknowledged identities, and stimulate community conversation, storytelling, and sense of civic responsibility. This might be a wonderful example of like what Dino's work fits into this category. Design, this theme encompasses the previous awards program in its entirety. So achievements or projects of any scale which offer sensitive, compatible, or innovative design approaches that preserve, enhance, or give new life and vibrancy to the city's built cultural heritage, including its cultural landscapes and natural environments. Climate resilience and stewardship, we had something similar in the awards program previously, but it focused specifically on architectural pursuits. So this is achievements or projects which demonstrably minimize material impact on the environment and prepare a site or structure to respond to or mitigate the impacts of climate change. Examples include adaptive use, salvaging or reuse of materials, diversion of construction debris, innovative technologies for construction techniques, energy and water efficiency above code, habitat-friendly design, landscape stewardship, and use of native plant material to the benefit of species diversity. And then the conversations with the arts coordinator and later with the Arts Council is the theme of arts or artistic pursuits, achievements or projects which demonstrate a significant contribution to the practice, production, growth, support, or availability of the city's cultural heritage as embodied in a variety of artistic pursuits, including but not limited to visual, performing, and literary arts. And then the nomination and selection process, it's similar to what the previous awards program had, except I think we would want to have the call for nominations occur during Historic Preservation Month. So in May, it would be open for a longer period of time to make it more digestible by the community, allow people to nominate and put together applications. We were thinking 3 months time, and then the awards themselves would happen sometime in the fall. And then the actual process itself is relatively simple, and it's the burden is on whoever's nominating a project, but one, to identify an award category, one of the three, identify one or several themes that you want to be nominated under, and then provide a narrative that explains how you've contributed to the cultural heritage of the city, and then provide whatever attachments and supporting documentation you think is necessary. And then the selection would occur through a community-based jury that would vary from year to year. So it's not, the commission is not acting as the jury, the commission is sponsoring the program. Independent community-based jury would review them and then say, we want to confer recognition on these, and there'd be some award ceremony that would happen afterwards.
And your office is administrating this?
I mean, not as much as, the call for nominations and receiving the information and publicizing it, but and that's very similar to what we did before.
So how long did this program exist?
Well, this program is brand new. The awards program, generally, the design awards, they started in the early 1980s, I think. And
1980s. So there's been awards given every year since 1980?
Except for the past maybe 3 years.
More than one per year?
Yes, often upwards of 10.
Do we have a list of all the people who received these?
We do.
And what the project was?
We do,
On the website. I would love to see.
They're not on the website.
I would very much like to see.
When it was a design award, I know because Carlos used to do this, assembling the juries and the people who review the submissions was fairly easy. Generally, they were architects who weren't Evanston architects, and maybe architectural historians from Northwestern, people like that. So when you have this kind of diversity of category, it implies that somehow you want people with knowledge and expertise in each one of those areas. So I think that the jurying process becomes really complicated to orchestrate.
Yeah, and those are some of the conversations that I'm having with like the arts coordinator, the arts council. I think we're trying to build some capacity and see what that looks like to build that out. But that was always the most difficult part. Even if the previous awards category was finding people to sit on the jury that were qualified, was always, you know, I don't think it would be dissimilar in its difficulty. You're just contacting different people.
Can I ask a strange question?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you give out the awards during preservation month?
Yeah, you could. I don't have a huge issue. It just, you know, I guess if you work 3 months back from May, what that looks like.
I think.
I mean,
most
we're in April
architects-
now.
Sorry, I think most architects know to look for it in the beginning of the year because most of the villages give them out in May.
Mhm.
So
I don't have a strong opinion. I don't.
it just helps your cause a little bit for preservation.
So are these architectural design awards?
They were in the past.
They were in the back.
Yeah.
And now it's people who have contributed in other ways, including that, to the preservation of the community.
Correct.
Preservation,
Yes.
Cultural heritage.
cultural heritage as opposed to, but the preservation of something is contributing to the cultural heritage.
I mean, let me just say that
Yeah.
we're in April right now. I just wanted to say, we're in April right now, so we can't give the awards
I
out.
understand, but just going forward.
Yeah, but so that's where the timing came from, just because we were talking about what, and I said, well, it's Preservation Month in May, let's start it then if we can talk about it in April. But to talk about your point.
Yeah.
I expect that when people hear that the Preservation Commission has a new awards program or revived awards program.
Yeah.
Most people are gonna assume that it's just buildings
Oh.
at first.
No, you have to.
I think.
And then we're gonna have to,
Correct. Yeah.
then we're gonna have to
Very well.
publicize. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, so that was the
Other
intent.
partner Organizations like Shorefront.
Yeah.
History Center, all
The
these
Arts
different
Council.
arts councils, and all South Evanston, I mean, just anyone and everyone in the city. And just spread the word that it's more than just.
That's what I was gonna say. So we can't assume that what we understand here, that is new about this is gonna be obvious to other people. If we're gonna do it, we need everyone talking to people.
Do you have like a little blurb basically explaining why it's different?
Yeah, it's in the very beginning. And yeah. at the
You know,
top.
Sarah, I think that's a good point, but what's unclear to me now is that the past awards program was not something done by the Preservation Commission. It was actually done by the city of Evanston. So.
Well, I don't think that's true.
Are you sure?
Yeah, it was always sponsored by the commission. It went through various forms of when they were recognized by city council.
Procedurally, like, I can't speak for anybody else, but I think this is a great idea. And what do? Are you looking to us to sort of take a vote on it?
Well,
Say we
yeah.
want to do this, or?
So the commission is the group that the city council, when they wrote the ordinance, has empowered to implement something like this. So the commission has to decide, yes, we want to sponsor this awards program as we're empowered to do so, and we're going to vote on it. If the commission doesn't do it, I don't know another commission that has the power to.
Since it's approaching 9 o'clock, I'd like to so move.
I mean, if there aren't any other comments, I think Lisa's comment about changing it so that it's every year except for 2024.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, our previous awards program was never consistent
No, it was not.
in.
Carlos, did I miss it?
Yeah,
Yeah, so but we're sort of solidifying this and so it would be fine with me if we change this to say the annual call for nominations is 3 months enough? 3 months, okay? Okay, so
Yeah.
somebody do math for me. Is that February? If we want to, no. It needs to be in January so that then the jury has time to look at it. Is that correct?
So January, February, March, and then March.
April, and then announced
ready
in
for
May. Okay,
Right?
so, right, I think. So if we say we'll release, so I'm on page 26 of our packet. Commission through various outlets will release an annual call for nominations in January of each year. And the nomination period shall be open for a period of 3 months. And then the winners will be announced in May, which is historic preservation. So make that change. Does that sound good to everybody?
And may I, so I've been on the commission for a while and I think I was on it for 1 year before it stopped. And even then I had very little awareness of the actual program happening. And so can we announce the winners as part of our agenda, or can we somehow bring and notify the commission a little bit more? And,
Yeah.
you know, I know that we're not part of the review committee and that kind of stuff, but just making it a little bit more.
I think bringing
Maybe
it,
it
yeah.
was in our group, you
Yeah,
know.
we can put it on the May agenda. and it'll be a
It
thing.
kind of, my understanding is the design awards at their height were sponsored by the commission, but celebrated by the city council and the commission. So the city council and the preservation commission would have a
That's nice.
meeting, and it was a higher form of recognition, and that fell away several, maybe a decade ago, 10 years ago. They stopped doing that. And then you're right, it kind of became kind of an afterthought, I think, being involved in the commission. I think considering the breadth of a program like this, there might be some interest in a bigger celebration of these individuals.
That would be.
I would hope.
But this, what we're voting on tonight is just the nomination and selection process. I mean, not just, but
program.
yeah, that's where it, what we're voting on tonight ends with selection, and then the way in which we highlight them is.
Question about the selection. The selection process, it would be the body that would be selecting the winners would be a group of people from the community.
Correct.
That would be assembled by.
I would probably do me working with other organizations to identify people.
But just we would have nothing to do with this.
I
You
would say it would be nice if the chair were involved. I would say, right?
Serving on the jury.
No,
Oh,
helping
yeah.
us to choose.
Okay, yeah, these are
One
two
that
different
represents
things.
the other
Yeah, I
organization.
think the commission can be involved in trying to identify a
Is
person
that
who
what you're
might be
talking
on the
about?
jury.
Yeah.
Just like the Arts Council might be involved in identifying someone who could serve on the jury that has that expertise in.
So we could nominate
You could suggest
something like,
sure.
you know.
Yeah.
Women's Club of Evanston.
And in the past, when we did it, just someone or two people from the board just went around with the jurors to see the projects.
Yeah, that's, we used to
And
do that.
stuff, so, I mean, I think the commission would be involved that way if they want.
Yeah, we used to do that.
Do we, do you feel that we need to add something to this particular document that we're voting on tonight to that effect?
The process, I mean, the post awards process, I don't know.
No, the selection of the jury.
It's like, yeah, that's, I don't know what I would add. I think
Okay.
so.
Yeah, it's
Strange.
It'd be nice to see it on the agenda at the beginning of the year, just to like have it in our minds and everyone sponsoring it. We're not
Figure it
I
out.
feel like.
Yeah. I think I can imagine it being on the agenda in January, just so
Yeah.
it's something we
Yeah.
talk about, and then being on the agenda in March, talk about, like a staff report.
And to be clear, like.
Yeah.
Maybe a lot, in like the last 10 years or 15, 12, whenever this disappeared, there was no physical, like, meeting where the board was presented.
Yeah.
There used to be.
There was a party with food and, there was.
Yes. You need a budget first.
Two things. One, I think that we should see the thing before they're awarded. We see, I mean, before this other group names who the winners? We even see, would we know who's on the group of
The jury?
the jury, the nominating jury? Do you think that we should know who's on the jury and who wins before it's announced? I mean, the commission? No?
Yeah, that's not how it happened previously.
So I know so many things in Evanston seem to happen over there. Right? This seems like another one to me, like, you know, who
I
gets to
agree.
choose and who chooses what.
I think it's a valid question that Charles is bringing up, who gets to choose who's on the jury. I feel like maybe we should say something here that the commission should have a role in who selects who's going to be on the jury.
Even if it's just like a confirmation.
Just
Just to know who it is. I mean,
yeah.
because we all know people in the
Well,
community, we know what's going
I
on.
can imagine how, you know, like, there's one organization that's really gung ho, they want to have all their members on the jury, and, you know, and so they're just
Yeah,
churning out nominations to be on the jury, you know, and kind of clogging up.
what can we say? So I'm on page 27 of our packet. At the end, under selection, where it says nominations will be reviewed by an independent community-based selection committee with varying professional backgrounds. Would you like to add a sentence there or something that says that the commission, somebody on the, you know, a liaison, commission liaison?
Description is going to vary from category to category of necessity. The American Chicago chapter American Institute of Architects has run a design awards program for years. Historically, the jury is always assembled from architects who are not here in Chicago.
Yeah, that's how it's the awards, the jury has been non-Evanston people.
That's the design.
The design process, yeah.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, that's that.
But I think the criteria, what I'm saying is that the criteria isn't going to be constant for each one of these award
Like
categories.
you might have a cultural anthropologist from Northwestern who is in Evanston. It seems like that might be appropriate, but you wouldn't have an architect who's from Evanston.
Right. It's, I think that the details of that can be left up to the individual years maybe, but in terms of what we say here, what we're voting on, does the commission want to have some role in assembling the jury? Because if so, I wonder if we should just put a sentence in here that says,
No,
No,
no, okay.
What do you mean by role? Actually selecting? I only wanted to, I only wanted to know who was being
I
nominated.
think that's.
I mean, it's internal. I mean, I'm not gonna go talk about it.
Okay.
But I think, you know, I'm on the commission. All this stuff reflects back on me by being a member of the
Right.
commission.
I mean, I don't think we should recommend people, but we are in fact a resource.
Yeah, we're definitely a
Katie
resource.
can certainly come to
Okay.
talk through appropriate
So
people or.
Are we going to indicate who's making the selection of who's on the jury?
In the past, how did that work?
In the past, the jury was chosen by staff. Reach
Okay.
out
So-
and
so-
pick
And then did
Yeah,
the commission
3
ever
to
say-
5 individuals. It was never presented back to the commission like, here are the jury members that we've assembled. It was just here are, and then during the awards, the members of the jury were invited. It was written up, the bios for each juror and who they are. And then the individuals that were nominated and also those that won the awards were invited.
So for each of these categories, people familiar with that topic, with that area, and that thing would be making the decision about who from their group would be the
who
person, right?
submitted an
Correct,
application.
that's, yeah.
All right, so nominations will be reviewed by an independent community-based selection committee assembled by staff. Okay, with varying professional backgrounds. So shall we just say it? Just assembled by staff so that it's clear, transparent.
And should we replace community-based with something else because we're talking about potentially getting out of community?
Okay,
Yeah.
independent selection committee with varying backgrounds, which is assembled by City of Evanston staff.
you know, I made sure I would include community-based. Because if the applications are done correctly and the discussion of the person, the organization, or the design is complete in this age of Zoom and telecommunications, you know, the staff should be able to find people they think are highly qualified to make those judgments across the country.
Yeah, I think we
Yeah,
can. do that.
yeah, we're gonna take community-based out. All right. Are there any other comments on this? Because if not, we should take a vote. A motion to,
That's true.
all right.
So I second.
So, well, we need to list out the changes, or are you're keeping track of the changes?
I'm fine. with it. Yeah, you can just say,
Okay. So does anyone, would you like to go ahead and, Stuart, and make a motion?
I move that the new recommendations for an expanded awards recognition program that now includes cultural, historical, as well as design categories be approved with changes and suggestions made at this meeting.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Second? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstain? Okay, motion carries. Okay, it is 9 o'clock, and per our custom, we usually take a few minutes break. Is everyone open to that? That would be nice. So we've in the past taken a 5-minute break, which would put us at something like 10 after 9, a little bit. Does that sound good? 12 after 9. Okay, at 12 after 9, we will be back and we will pick up with item C under new business. I'm the first person to say that.
When's your birthday?
I need to dig up, I won a gavel one time when I was in college. Oh, yeah. I did all this. For a long weeknight, but okay. We're gonna get going.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, next item on the agenda is under new business is item C, the 2023 Preservation Commission Annual Report. Kate, you want to read this into the record, please?
Sure.
And just give a brief sort of context for it.
Sure. In compliance with Article 11 of the Rules and Procedures, the Commission shall review and adopt the 2023 annual report to be presented to the Planning and Development Committee at a subsequent date, currently anticipated for the end of May. This is the second one that we've done. I think it's a wonderful idea. The previous report was really well received. This is something we put in the Rules and Procedures to do annually. I think we might be the only board and commission that does this, but I think it's wonderful. A really quick summary. I'll kind of scroll down. The beginning is just various background on who serves on the commission. One very interesting thing, I think we represent 7 of 9 wards. I think that's really significant.
Yeah.
Because that isn't true on boards and commissions. Some of this, you can give me comments later if you want. Talks about budget, talks about the purpose, commission's mandate. These were last year's objectives. It talks about what we wanted to achieve. These were listed on the annual work plan last year. So to actively recruit members for the commission who better reflect Evanston's diversity and act as a panel of community members with qualified backgrounds rather than a panel of experts in a singular field, to prioritize transparency, to be approachable, and to create meaningful opportunities for education, outreach, and advocacy that reach broad audiences and communicate historic preservation's potential in advancing our shared community goals, and to continue diversifying the commission's role beyond resource management or case review and fulfilling more of the commission's powers and responsibilities, which there are 30, so there are many of them. Brief summaries about major accomplishments the commission had. So we did have an active commissioner recruitment campaign for the first time, where we created a subcommittee with Commissioner Ziem and Chair Dreller and myself, and the two of you were really successful in really kind of blanketing the community and creating flyers and other promotional tools. And I think we've been very successful, and the members sitting here in front of us we are a much more diverse commission in terms of our backgrounds and perspectives than we have been in the past. And I think that's important, that we should try as much as possible to represent the community that we're here to serve. The reactivated newsletter, this was something that was really popular with the commission in the 70s and 80s, and it hadn't been done for probably 3 decades until last year. It was the first time that this was brought back. It's been really successful. It's been really well received. We've released 4 of them currently. The audience that we reach has increased by 8% or 200 individuals. We now reach an audience of 2,800 people. That had basically been stagnant. I was able to look at it. It had been stagnant for a decade. So this is really the first time that there's been an uptick. Nothing has changed other than the newsletter. So I have to make an assumption that it's at least partially involved. I would like to read some of these. I think this is important. Increased advocacy. The commission in its history early on was a very strong advocate and voice for preserving and identifying the city's cultural assets. I think when it got binding design review power, it kind of monopolized its time. And a lot of those things fell to the wayside. They were just reviewing a lot of cases. And I think that the perception in the community changed too over doing that for 3 decades, that's what the commission does. That's all that it does. That's all it's empowered to do, is review COA submissions. And that's not true. So really, for the first time that I've seen, the commission has been a strong advocate again. And some of this are the advocacy around rehabilitation and a rehabilitation model for Harwood Park. The commission before had really been very passive, only reviewing the proposed demolition in that case and not really influencing anything prior. Discussing the inherent sustainability of preservation. This is something we've done consistently. This is another one that we've done more frequently, but participating in the certified local government program, especially in this past year, reviewing a section 707 project for Ryan Field and advocating pretty significantly for some increased mitigation measures that were adopted in that agreement that deal with interpretive elements and expanded deconstruction and salvage requirements. That's something the commission should be very proud of. And then expanding tribal consultation with historic preservation officers from various tribal groups. This is probably the first time that I've seen this happen too. I look back in the history and think this is really one of the first opportunities that we've taken to take this seriously, and it's very important. And then really a highlight, and it's wonderful that Councilmember Kelly is sitting behind us, but that the commission was really successful in assisting in the development and launching of the city's legacy business program, which is really a significant program when we talk about a larger breadth of what historic preservation is, what cultural assets are. The legacy business program really embodies this idea of living heritage, that it can be people, its stories, its businesses, its traditions. All of those are wrapped into this legacy business program that will just continue to grow. The speaker series, when we talk about education and advocacy, this is something that was very important to Chair Dreller, that we had many individuals come before the commission, just like we just had Dino, that come and talk on a variety of topics. It's important for the commission to get that feedback. It's also important that those are then available for the public and public consumption as an education tool. And it really also reinforces that we do more than just review COAs. So we had various topics, but celebrating living heritage was one of those. Preservation as a really powerful land use tool, preservation and sustainability. We had deconstruction. We had talks about archaeological resources, tribal consultation, changes in state archaeological laws. These are all very important things to get out into the public space and to talk about in a public setting. And then we also developed a training model. This is both for new commissioners to have consistency in how they're trained, but also the idea is then to be able to train other city departments, city divisions, council members and members of the public about what the preservation ordinance actually is, what it does, what it's capable of, and that it's really here to serve the community, that it's largely there for the community to identify and try to register the important and associated with our collective identity and memory of what makes Evanston unique. What are our current objectives for the upcoming year? I had two listed in here. One is just to continue implementing the city's preservation plan and the initiatives within it. The other, which is somewhat unique here, is to ensure that the comprehensive plan and zoning code integrate and expand upon the preservation plan itself, and that to ensure that these preservation related checks and balances continue to be incorporated into the zoning ordinance and our entitlement processes moving forward, so that we don't continue to lose our cultural heritage. And then there's various sub goals here that relate to the specific initiatives that we have in the annual work plan for this year, but continuing to confront common myths regarding historic preservation, aligning the preservation program with best practices, expanding education advocacy efforts, building capacity for the commission to implement these things. The commission can't do it on their own, staff can't do it on their own. So building this kind of volunteer core, and we've made some progress on that. And then acting as a resource for the city and consistently advocating for the power of preservation to positively impact quality of life for the residents. These are the specific initiatives that were adopted. And then this talks about the appropriateness of our purpose and mandate. This is very similar language to last year, where we talk about how there are aspects of the ordinance that don't align with some of the initiatives within the preservation plan. like Dino referenced and we referenced, not being able to register more cultural heritage at the same level as other landmarks. And then briefly, the performance of the commission's resource management functions. This is a reflection, these are a reflection here, and you'll remember this from last year, of probably what was pretty consistent over the last 3 decades in terms of case review. And you'll see how this was monopolizing for the commission's time and its volunteer capital, where you're consistently reviewing somewhere between 80 to 115 cases per year. Through various changes to the rules of circumstance that were made, and after 2020, you'll see that we're starting to be more consistent now, somewhere between 20 and 30 cases per year. And that's freeing up the ability for the commission to do all the aforementioned work that we discussed. So I think we want this to continue to be consistent, and I think it will be. This is such a common myth, and then it's in here, it's important to break down. The commission didn't deny anything last year. No one appealed any projects last year. The vast majority of cases here, almost 90%, were reviewed by staff, 218. 25 went to the commission last year. Of those, 5 were approved with conditions, so they needed to be modified in some way. Some of this is also a testament to the technical assistance that individuals are receiving, the pre-application review subcommittee, guidelines that we're putting in place. One thing that isn't listed in here is last year, staff provided somewhere between 500 and 600 instances of technical assistance. So that's phone calls, emails, in-person site visits. We visit the inside of people's homes. We visit people outside their homes very consistently. And I think what we're creating after doing this for 30 years somewhat consistently is kind of a preservation ethic in Evanston. And so you're starting to see people know what to present, what they know will be approved. And that's the whole idea. So we want projects to be approved. We want to get to a yes, and we've been successful with that. These, I think, are important. It's what concerns does the commission have that we want to bring forward to the city council's attention. So one was the state recently passing House Bill 3413. That's the amendment to the Human Remains Protection Act, and the ability to reinter and repatriate inadvertent discovery and cultural remains, ideally locally. Now, the inconsistency here is that the state law says they can only be reinterred on state property. It doesn't really match the spirit of the law when they've been discovered where there is no state property that's proximate. So what we're bringing to the city council's attention is that this is a significant opportunity for a local policy and procedure that follows the spirit of this very significant state law that was passed 6 months ago. Same as last year, this one, conservation districts, they remain a very underexplored tool to retain naturally occurring affordable housing and also to stabilize neighborhoods vulnerable to change and development pressures. This will be increasingly important in my mind as we advance the new comprehensive plan and zoning ordinance, where you're inherently changing development pressure and where development pressure exists, and just wanting to have as many tools as possible, I think, is important.
We don't have any, right?
Correct.
At this point.
And we have no way in the ordinance to even create one, even though they're very significant. It's a national best practice.
Mhm.
It's a very effective tool.
I used to
really
live in
accomplished.
Dallas and they have them there, and Dallas isn't that good at preservation.
Yeah.
They have them.
Yeah, and it's this community-driven approach. That's the other really successful thing for it is it's not a top-down approach. It comes from the bottom up. There's a lack of incentives in Evanston. We have no local incentives. That's a consistent problem.
What do you mean that's what do you mean by that?
We don't have any financial incentives for homeowners. We don't have any, one that's very common and kind of a national best practice is the ability to waive permit fees in certain instances. And this is a really an acute problem in Evanston for our more kind of vernacular homes, where the cost of proposing something that meets the standards is a very high percentage of the home's total value. And so being able to offset that somehow is something that it's been a consistent problem raised by homeowners, and we haven't found a way to address it.
You may recall I brought it up when we were talking about Ryan Field.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a lot of
Yeah. Are
conversations.
they, what happened with that?
That did not get in.
That did not get incorporated.
Wow.
But it was good suggestion.
Okay.
But finding other, I mean, the easiest one is our permit fee waivers is really one of the easiest tools, because you're not having a separate pot of money that you're giving someone, you're just saying, we're not collecting that money.
That's in the
But how-
Preserve 2040.
And what is the amount of, did you ever quantify what that amount is?
It's so variable based on type of work, but
Like
it's.
last year, do we know how the permit?
Oh, I don't know
fees were?
Hundreds.
Total, yeah.
No, we tried to find it and then it's hard to,
But for an addition on a house, the permit fees are in the thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
So 25
And
projects.
you actually think the city would.
I did that math too. Go ahead.
I don't know. Yeah, I think it's something that you have to advocate for specific instances. It's not,
Yeah,
it's not for all, the historic preservation permits don't pay the permit fee. It's for a certain value of home. That's a landmark, or the percentage of the improvement compared to the value of the home that would qualify. But, we have not delved into those specifics, but advocating for increased incentives, I think is.
Is that an equity issue in parts of town?
Sure, of course it is. Yeah,
I think we can maybe use that.
yeah.
Disappointed Northwestern didn't take that one up. Very disappointed.
And then.
Just want to put that on the record.
No.
All right.
And then,
Record it and.
The last one that I think is really important is just historic preservation, and the commission as subject matter experts remain an under-leveraged tool for the city to achieve its goals and objectives. I believe that very strongly.
you're the numbering on here. I just realized it says 1 and then 1 again, but you intended it to be 1 and then 2.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. And this is just, in the past, we had, or previous reports that I dug up a long time ago when we used to do this, it would be meetings attended, meetings that you didn't attend. We decided to change it to meetings attended and then other working groups and subcommittee meetings that commissioners attended, just to kind of show the bulk of volunteer commitment that occurred, which is significant. And this is this ended up being very complicated because we have people resign and we have people at the end of term. So this is more complicated than it probably should be, but it's a reflection of last year's membership and what occurred. So that was my attempt at a quick synopsis.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions or comments?
And this will be available through the website, is that right? The annual report?
Yeah.
And then we're also presenting it to the planning
Planning and development. Committee,
planning development.
who we report to. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well done.
We have to vote on this one.
Correct.
Okay. Does anyone have any additional comments or? Okay. Seeing none, does somebody have a motion they'd like to make?
Accept and.
Adopt.
Adopt.
All right. Is there a second? Seconded. All right. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the approval of meeting minutes. Does anyone have any comments about the minutes from February's meeting?
I didn't receive any.
Oh, you didn't receive it. Okay. We will then, in that case, assume that they are approved. Moving on to discussion, the section entitled discussion, no vote will be taken. We're going to reverse A and B here so that the folks that have been waiting very patiently for the Noise Cultural Arts Center feasibility study presentation can make a presentation. So if you'd like to come on up. Oh, absolutely. Yes, if you wouldn't mind, staff could read that into the record while they're getting set up.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I won't read the first part, but I did want to say that Commissioners Bovan and Elman did sit in on a working group meeting with representatives, myself and project architect from Public Works Agency to review in more detail. Those comments were incorporated in the draft comment letter. I also incorporated all the comments that I received from individual commissioners prior into that letter. So I'll just read the second part. In compliance with the commission's advisory review and consultation powers and duties related to city-initiated projects or activities, the commission shall review a draft comment letter incorporating comments received to date and make additional suggestions. The commission's empowered to do this under code section 283G24.
Okay. Do we have some graphics that we're going to show?
Oh, yeah, I can.
Do you have some graphic material or no?
Do I?
Yeah.
No.
Okay. Okay, no problem.
If you want me to look at the drawings, it could be helpful. They're relatively complicated, but maybe the best drawings are in the appendix.
Well, let's see
But
what
there are not
is
many-
necessary.
There are not many visual graphics
Yeah.
that were contained. It's mostly a narrative report.
Okay,
Do you
All
know
right.
the Solace O'Brien report?
I do.
Yeah.
okay.
It's on, yeah.
Yeah, so if you need it, we have it, but maybe
Yeah,
just
okay.
go ahead. And if you all wouldn't mind introducing yourself.
Sure. So Councilmember Claire Kelly of the First Ward, where Noise, our beloved Noise Cultural Arts Center is. Yeah.
Mary Rosinski, I'm on the Parks and Rec Board. I'm also a realtor and I have a couple comments from most perspectives.
Okay, yeah, we'll have to, when it's appropriate, just really short comment.
It's open now.
Do you want me to? I didn't want to put you on the spot, but I don't know if you just wanted to summarize kind of our conversation that we had with Public Works, or I can try to do it as well.
I think just foremost, we absolutely appreciate the opportunity to meet with the project manager. He was very open to our different questions and our suggestions and clarifications. It felt like he was really listening and we were definitely listening as well. And so I think that it was a really productive conversation and the right time to be meeting with the project manager who's developing the designs. I think that it's delightful to see the city investing in a building like this. An original school building, I think just seeing a building like this being invested in and considered is great and could be set the precedent for other B65 buildings or other former school buildings or other buildings of its size and construction fit. So I'm excited to see what's going to be moving forward with it. I know that it aligns with the preservation's 2040 plan with sustainability measures and marrying the two with preservation and sustainability. And it's exciting to see what's going to go forward. There's a lot of work to be done for sure, but yeah, it was great to be part of that conversation.
Did you want to add anything
No,
more?
I think you hit that with some.
And I can try to summarize some of the comments that I collected. One is just, it's a very significant, it's probably one of the most significant institutional resources that the city has. And probably one of the most significant public buildings that we have in terms of its history. And it's really rich and varied history. So it's designed originally by Daniel Burnham, D.H. Burnham Company in the 1890s. But then some of the additions are also very significant, designed by Perkins and Will. These are native sons of Evanston who went on to create a nationally recognized architecture firm that is to this day highly significant and prominent. And this was designed at a time really at maybe the height of some of their work. Shortly after some of the work they did at Crow Island and Winnetka, they then came to do the addition at the Noise School. So the addition is very significant as well. It was designated a landmark, City of Evanston landmark in 1982. That was shortly after it was purchased by the city when it was decommissioned by District 65. I think it's also important for the city and through this process to recognize that the Illinois State Historic Preservation Officer has determined that it's eligible for the National Register. That's important, particularly based on the funding sources that are identified and understanding that there will likely be a review at the state level for a lot of the work that they're undertaking. If those same funding sources are pursued, or if there's permits, very often state permits are required for the geothermal installation, which would also trigger a review. As Commissioner Bodine stated, I think the commission really did seem through the comments I received to believe in really the inherent sustainability of adapting the building, the adaptability of the building, and investing in the building and investing in it significantly is a good way to preserve it for continued public use. We think it's important that it continues to be used by the public in the future. Some things that came up, one was proposed window replacement. I think in concept, the commission seemed to agree that this alteration could be compatible, but there was really a lacking amount of information to understand exactly what was proposed. We just told the project manager to look through the window replacement guidelines that we have to avoid common errors that might occur. One thing that was marginally concerning, not necessarily concerning, but it should be considered, is that they talked about triple glazing the windows, but not really understanding what impact that would have to the proportions of the sash, and also understanding what that might do to the operability of the windows, because the window becomes very heavy with triple glazing. And it also wasn't clear what impact there was on energy savings going from double glazing to triple glazing, or having like an argon filled window versus triple glazing. It didn't seem like those were explored. Rooftop solar installation, they had a few different concepts for rooftop solar. One was a solar shingle, and one was separate arrays of panels. This was another one where I think it seemed in theory this could be done in a compatible way, but there was really just a lack of information to understand what the actual visual impact would be. And it seemed like there was a deference towards a solar shingle and its ability to replicate the textural qualities of the what is now a non-original roofing shingle. But I think this is an opportunity to really say that, you know, sustainability and preservation are not mutually exclusive and that they can coexist. The geothermal installation, I think it was very well received, but there was a little word of caution that one, there's different methods to geothermal installation, either a horizontal or vertical loop system, and just finding whatever system has the least impact, one, on mature shade trees and other vegetation, but also just results in less excavation. I think it was interesting that we found, based on previous Sambor maps, that the majority of the park had never been developed previously. The portion of the parking lot had previously been developed, and the whole property was bisected by, I think it was Irwin Court at one time. But having no significant development there from really, you know, the 1880s on, it begs the question that, you know, inadvertent discovery could happen, and to be prepared for if that happens. I think that's especially true as, you know, Ridge Avenue is a well-known travel point, and we're not far off of Ridge Avenue. So it's certainly possible, something to consider, something to think about. Several commissioners said there should just be early consultation with the state and tribal members to understand what method is preferred and how on-site monitoring would occur. The changes to the surface parking lot, this was another area where the plans just lacked a lot of necessary detail to really understand what the visual impact would be. The primary elevation of this building is not the noise elevation, it's the east elevation that faces the park and faces the parking lot. That's the primary elevation with the main entrance, that it's the most highly detailed. Really not understanding, it seems like about a 16-foot high metal canopy is proposed with solar atop that. I think it was pretty consistent amongst commissioners that I received comments from, that they felt like the standards for construction were likely not met for that type of installation, but also just wanting more volumetric studies, visual representations of what that would look like. And I also had a couple of commissioners say that it was just kind of a missed opportunity for that site as well, which could be leveraged in a more significant way than just solar installation, and not only leveraged in a way that meets more community goals, but creates a more appropriate visual relationship, not only with the noise building, but the 900 block of the noise business district opposite noise as well. And that whatever could be built there could also help offset some of the energy use that happens at noise. So you could theoretically construct a building there that's much more visually sympathetic and also has solar installation on top of that. There were also some other alterations that were listed. Some of these are the indoor renovations, and then some of the air handling units and ADA improvements. When we talked to the project manager, he really said that the bulk of the improvements were limited to floors 1 and 2. And then we talked about some of the interior modifications needing to be done sensitively, because there's really a lot of interior fabric of that building that remains. It's and it's also its volumetric spaces are really largely intact. One of the things I think that was concerning here was the need for exploration of insulation between the interior and exterior walls. It doesn't seem like there's any cavity to provide insulation. So if that necessitates completely stripping all the interior finishes, removing all the interior plaster, that's something that certainly it seemed like we would not recommend. And also not seeing that necessarily has, that the existing R value of the multi-width masonry wall probably meets or exceeds the code requirements now anyway, so it may just be unnecessary. I think we were pleased with some of their suggestions for the placement of the systems. So the first floor systems are placed in the basement. The systems for the second floor are placed in the attic. They did not foresee a need for more ductwork or lowering the ceilings.
Right.
It was really just some chases for plumbing that would happen, and maybe some exterior puncture points in the masonry for certain
For the
things.
ventilation.
So we felt like a lot of this could be done sensitively, and then we also talked about the ADA improvements and exploring if that could happen on the primary elevation. If not, replacing basically in kind in the existing location, and then respecting the design vocabulary and materials that exist on the building for whatever that new wall construction becomes. And then I think this last sentence is really kind of sums up what you talked about, that we really believe in the spirit of the scope of work. And I think it provides opportunities for continued life and vibrancy for the building, and recognize the value of investing in the building and adapting historic resources, but just ensuring that that's done in a sensitive way.
Were you done?
Yeah.
And now we can talk?
Yep.
So I was very impressed by this letter. Thank you both very much for doing that on behalf of the commission and everyone else who submitted comments. I'm so glad that we have had an opportunity to be involved with this project at this stage of the project. And so everything we say about it with them is, I hope, like positive. You know, I don't want this letter to look like, well, we're missing this and we're missing this and we're missing this those of you all who aren't here, we put the public comment at the beginning of the meeting in order to not require people from the public to wait through the whole meeting to talk about stuff, to give them an opportunity to say what they have to say and then they can leave. And also so that we don't have long back and forth conversations between the commission and members of the public, which has happened in the past, and it is not best practice. So you guys we don't have our 3-minute timer here, but we'll just go ahead and, they can have you're welcome to make comments. The way we do it is, you introduce yourself and stuff. Does somebody, you want to keep track of the time? Sure. Okay. So that we are fair for everyone gets the same amount of public comment.
I'm Mary, I was at her meeting, so that's why.
Right.
I apologize. But Mary Rosinski, and I live here in Evanston for 32 years, and I'm also on the Parks Board, but I'm not speaking for the Parks Board, and I'm also a realtor, and I'm speaking actually from that perspective because this building is so important to Evanston. And it's so great to hear you all appreciate that. From a standpoint of bringing people to our community who love it, it's buildings like that and the excitement that's going on in that building with the arts is what makes Evanston kind of cool. It's real engine and it supports the business district over there. So every now and then I hear this thing, it doesn't do that much. There's only some artists and it doesn't cover itself. But it's so much more. It's like looking at a family and saying it's only people. What you don't see is the excitement that goes on there. And so I just want to, just in case you get this push to, abandon it or tear it down, it's such an important part of Evanston. I remember in 2013, I think we had to fight to keep the building. And it's historic. And the tenants have been doing good. And just as a point of reference, from 2015, I think, on until they sort of switched the accounting processes here, that building was kicking off $200,000 to $250,000 a year in income that just unfortunately wasn't put back into the building. So it's a good building. It's been withstanding, and I just hope we can keep it because it's so cool. Thank you.
Thank you. And then did you want to speak also?
Sure.
Thank you. Go.
So first, I want to thank you all for all your work on this commission. It's just such a huge asset to our city. And Kate, I'm just every time so impressed with your expertise and leadership. I really can't say to you in fact. So thank you all. This commission means a lot to me and our community. Yeah, so this, I appreciated the Salas O'Brien review. It was presented in phases, 4 phases. The first one, HVAC and electrical. And, the most sort of non-discretionary work that needs to be done is the HVAC. And my concern is that it seems like this happens frequently, and I do appreciate all the sort of long-range planning and looking at this center, but my deep concern is that this big price tag is being put out to council. And instead of doing the necessary upgrades, it should have been done 5 years ago. We should have been reinvesting in this wonderful center that means so much to our community, so much to the Noise Business District also. It's right next to the L. That money hasn't been reinvested. We haven't been proceeding forward with regular upgrades that we should be on our beautiful public facilities, right, on all our buildings. And, I was told that this happened like with Robert Crown. It just got talked about because the price tag for 15 years to the point where they had to demolish them and build a new one. So my concern is how to make a recommendation that council, I would like to see council proceed right now with voting on moving forward with the HVAC and the electrical. I'm very concerned though, because of these, this solar, and I'm glad I agree with what the opinions that were expressed here about some of these proposals. But looking at that whole package and deciding they have to make a decision about that, what's going to happen is we're not going to move forward on the HVAC that was needed 5 years ago. And we're just going to talk and talk. And I'm deeply worried about what the result of this big ticket package is going to have on this beautiful cultural center, historical, that means so much to our community. So I don't know how that plays out here with you all, but I just ask that you keep that in mind, that we want a practical outcome. We want to look at impact and outcome with our decision, with your decisions, and how that will actually have a positive impact. So I think just saying we support $22 million for this,
I know with all the qualifying comments that you made, but I think we really do need to advocate for moving forward on what is non-discretionary now, and in the name of keeping it and preserving it, and then look at next year, revisit some of these other options. The solar industry is changing all the time anyway, so to commit to that would really make sense. And there is federal funding through the IRA and the direct pay money available for like geothermal. I guess this is supposed to be a prime location because of the grounds around it for horizontal, which is, I guess, but yes, I hear the concerns about the trees. So anyway, so that's my big concern, is that we are only assessing this whole big, large packet as what we're deciding on, as opposed to saying, proceed with the HVAC, which they've needed for over 5 years now. So, okay. Thank you. Thank you. I didn't know that you all were here to speak on this, or else I would have been perfectly happy to give you the opportunity to speak earlier.
No, it was interesting.
No, thank you for
that. It's so nice to hear this conversation. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Other, what is next steps?
It's really just if there's additional so that can
Okay.
incorporate. So yeah, you don't have to formally adopt this. It's just the opportunity to comment. So if you have additional comments, I'll incorporate them.
Yeah, I guess one thing that I had a question for Shane when we met was how and why the feasibility study was set up the way it was. And it seemed like it had to do with meeting all of these broad, really important, but far-reaching sustainability goals, and getting to net zero on an old building like that is just not practical, but they're looking at more. So, but this was really interesting to me because it does seem like the city has this pattern of not taking care of things and then having to like spend a whole lot more on a new building. And so, I mean,
Well, they flat out said it tonight at Finance and Budget Committee meeting, and one of the people on the committee basically said, let's remove all the programming from the building, and it's going to be cheaper to do that than fix up the building.
Which building? No, this one? Okay.
Rent a space downtown.
So, I mean, I think that does seem like it's something that we can say is that, you know, preservation has to happen, or it's just not preservation. So we almost have to look at it in that dimension of the financial, you know, we can't let the perfect be the enemy of the possible.
Yeah.
And to that, to support that, where is the capital plan? That is planning for the budgets, the scopes, the schedules, so that the public knows that this, it just needs to be, I feel, a little bit more transparent about what these future projects are going to be, what's earmarked, especially for the city-owned resources, especially the historic ones, which are going to have that big price tag. If the public knows that these projects are earmarked for $20 million, you know, 5 years ago, then, you know, 22 might not sound as crazy because maybe they were, you know, close to their earmark. I don't know. I just want to see the capital plan, and I don't know. I honestly don't know if it exists or not, especially for these historic buildings that they are stewards of.
I feel like it's almost like they have a hit list of historic buildings that they want to do something with. But, you know, why all within 1 year? I mean, why take all these $20, $30 million projects and bring them all up, right? Hire consultants, bring them all to the table at one time. I mean, that seems like, I don't understand that process. And I also don't understand why in the CPI, you know, the long-term plan, I didn't remember seeing noise in the long-term plan. Or I certainly didn't see Little Bean in the long-term.
Yeah.
But so this sudden need to address these major buildings is, I don't understand. I mean,
Was the same thing with parks, you know, when we had that discussion with, I'm blanking on the park's name, that was in the Ridge Historic District. And
Larry,
yeah, there,
Right.
and then they came with us and they said suddenly all the parks now have, there's like this massive list of parks that need work. And, you know, it's just like that list just apparently popped up.
Again, Bruce had a plan that shows that these were in the works for to begin with, and there's a way to start budgeting and funding these projects from the beginning.
I had another problem with parks, is I actually contacted a few Parks and Rec board members who seem not to be very, they seem to lack a lot of information about some of the park projects. Anyway, I think that I've lived in Evanston for like over 40 years. And the Noise building is a beautiful building. I've enjoyed it. I actually landscaped that building back in the 80s. As a matter of fact, I did a bunch of ADA renovation in that building 30 years ago. But I read this plan and it seemed to be so similar to the other plans, is that all of a sudden it's falling down. I mean, buildings don't just all of a sudden fall down. But I think, and I understand why it's the historic buildings, because they are older buildings. But there's so much. I'm a very visual person, you know, I'm landscape. And I see these buildings as beautiful works of art, that I see them as, you know, what Evanston represents to me. And to see them altered in a way that they no longer are beautiful buildings, or they're removed completely, is, I think I'm sorry, I just don't understand why all of a sudden there are so many of these buildings this is a big concern. So.
Well, that's a large topic, but we should focus again. We have, we're almost to the end of our meeting. This is, for those of you who are new, this is an unusually long meeting, just so that you know. Are there any other comments or things that you would like to have in this letter, or thoughts that you have?
I think excellent job. Okay, very, very diplomatic, very well.
You look like you want to say something.
Yeah, I think, well, it's after this last part of the discussion, I have a totally different sense of what this document should be doing.
I know.
Well, right, like this is written well as like a pre-COA letter, but it seems like we need to be talking about scope and priorities. Up at the top.
What can we make happen?
Yes.
Maybe it can be both.
Yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely, but just something a
I mean,
little
I
bit
took
more.
your comments very seriously, and I think they're all in a very similar thread. This idea of one, planning for these things, having that be upfront, but then really investing, at least initially and at first, in the things that are very impactful and meaningful to preservation of the building and its public facing programming. I think that's what I'm hearing from this commission.
So we are here at the commission often in a reactive mode. I've been thinking about this today, long story, but anyway, and so that's what you did. You were presented with a plan. We were presented with a plan and we reacted to it. But it's okay if you want to be proactive and suggest some other stuff.
I suggest that anytime a building with historic value is being addressed by the city, that the first contact is with preservation. The first.
You're not going to get any, nobody here is going to argue with you on that, Charles. The question is if other people at the city are going to, so how do you?
But we need to help them understand why it's important. A lot of people are younger. A lot of people don't live in Evanston. A lot of people aren't aware of the heritage. And so I think what Dino is doing, for instance, is very important because we help establish a value for these places beyond what some others may see. And that's our job, I think.
Ideally, we're going to be in the this mode of helping people at the beginning of their projects more. So this is an opportunity for us to figure out how we want to move forward. So if you, do you feel like the letter needs to be rewritten? Or
I don't
massaged?
think it needs to be, I mean, maybe just add something at the top that's a little bit more general about priorities and not the importance of keeping the building. I mean, it's like survival.
Yeah, yeah.
Find a way.
Yeah, I mean, like,
Yeah, finding-
in the annual report that you showed, we're really proud of, and I'm really proud of, that we approve all the projects. You know, where it is about the art of possible and making things happen. It's not about, you know, putting up a list of like, this is why this can't happen. As part of that is like telling people, hey, this is, you know, you have this resource. In order to keep it, you know, done well, for the resource to remain, we're gonna allow you to do this. It might not be everything that we need, but let's prioritize that.
I mean, I think that the other thing I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that the value of this building and the other significant public facing buildings is their benefit to the public and the programming they offer. It's not necessarily that it's being net zero.
Yeah.
And if it can be net zero and also accomplish that, that's wonderful. But if being net zero means it's at the expense of that, I'm hearing that that's something we want to address. Is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
And to your point about priorities, remember they had like 4 options for their MVP solution? And so maybe they don't go with the one that they had originally picked in price.
Well, it's, what are the goals? Like, if you tell
What are the
them,
goals?
make this thing net zero, well, if that breaks the bank, then that
Yeah.
wasn't a good premise.
They hear us saying we want to address climate resilience. And so what they're going to say to us is, okay, let's figure out how to make the building net zero.
We can walk and
We-
chew though.
Yes,
We can also tell them that it's had how many decades of, you know, embodied energy, you know, to construct the building, but then, you know, also the, you know, just the inherent qualities of it, like, which are in the letter, the inherent qualities of the masonry walls and such as insulation. I think that needs to be, because not everything is going to be a new solution.
Minor point, but I don't think we want to talk about how the brick meets the current R value, because that actually doesn't. That's not a good argument, folks.
but I guess what I'm saying is that I think that sometimes they're saying to us the things that they think we want to hear, not necessarily this group, but you know, they think that this is what can get away. So if they're going to say to us net zero, they're not going to expect us to argue with that, because everybody wants net zero, don't we? So it's a conversation.
I'm confused. I don't understand. Is there a budget for this? Like, I don't understand how this works. Like with a home project, you have a budget. You try to fit that budget. Like, this is like the budget comes later. Like they just like give us the wish list and then the city council is gonna vote it down basically because it'll be too expensive. Like, I'm just so confused
I think part
how
of
this
it-
works. Like,
At least my
We'll
understanding.
respond to that.
At least my understanding is, this is a difficult task that's been given to this project architect that works for the city, where he is told what is in the climate action resilience plan is that all public buildings have to be net zero. So demonstrate how that works and how that's feasible. This is a feasibility study. So his task is not, it's not budget driven. It's how to.
dependent, he isn't considering budget at all.
Well, I don't want to say that necessarily. I don't know if he is, but his task is demonstrate how to make this building net zero, and the output is
I see.
a dollar sign. And I think that, I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, because it's a feasibility study, so that comes first.
So it's just a matter of posing the problem differently. Instead of saying, how do you make this building net zero?
Yeah.
How do you say, like, if we start with this is valuable and we need to keep this building and we'll make it as green as possible
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
with the means that we have, but like losing the building should not be an option.
Turn it
should
down
not
to
be
net
the-
zero.
No, tear it down is the opposite of net zero.
No, there's no
Yeah.
cost in it.
Exactly.
Well, it's the cost of losing all of the material that's already there. Like, there's some value to the existing fabric of that building
I think
that
that
needs to be
we have
calculated.
a lot of talented people that work in the city, and I think it's important to be able to ask them to, you know, try harder. I mean, net zero is one thing, but I think in the context of like you said, a historic building, then from my perspective in this body, I think that the quality, the historic, preserving the historic building and preserving the character of the historic building is as important in my mind as net zero. I want to restore the building and be, like I just said, as net zero as it can, as close to that as it can be. But I wouldn't, if it's not net zero, I don't think that's.
I like the idea of priorities, which people were saying, because I think Commissioner Kelly was saying, like, give me some way to save this building, like, give me a way to bring the cost down, like, give me a way to make that argument at the commission or at city council, excuse me. So I think it was nice to hear what she had to say, because I think it lets us know what happens next, like beyond our commission. So I think we should do priorities. I actually love that idea.
And should we suggest a new feasibility study based on these priorities?
Yeah,
The city
right,
will-
yeah, I don't
Then
know.
they'll just spend more money on the feasibility.
Yeah.
They
study.
will.
Yeah.
No,
Can't
hard
they
to
just
spend more money
be
on
like a-
consult.
like a homeowner and say, how much money do you have? We know we want to live in the house at the end of the year.
Exactly.
Fix this because we can afford to fix this.
Right.
So the feasibility study in this particular case anyway, isn't about getting to a budget. Not what's feasible for the budget. It's what's feasible in terms of the program.
Right, it's like,
There's no point in doing that really, because budget is a real fact.
That is what was presented to us, and we are here in our commission in reaction mode. And I'm
Right,
suggesting.
but we
that
had a city council member tell us, please, please, please do something here, because this won't pass. Like, she's telling us what's gonna happen.
Yeah, but we're not supposed
And
to,
yet city council won't tell us the budget.
yeah.
You know, I think we can
Right.
talk about history, like our thing is history. Let's learn from our own history that we didn't invest in this building and then that building.
Right.
Harley Clark might go away. We didn't invest in Robert Crown, that had to go away. Like, let's just start taking care of our buildings.
That's a great answer.
Priority number.
That's,
Yeah.
yeah.
Just shame them into it.
It should be an annual line item in the city budget for facility maintenance, just basic maintenance, tuck pointing brick buildings and, just
Clear your
painting.
gutters.
and just-
With our designation of sites, like, I think we need to have like a commission list of like endangered buildings. I mean, specific centers should be on that list.
Yes.
It should be.
So
on-
that's in the Preserve 2040.
That's in
plan.
Preserve 2040.
It's a very
Josh,
effective
if you would
tactic. I
like,
mean, talk about shaming people. That's
if you would like to, we have had a whole conversation about that. If you would look it up,
Yeah,
Preserve 2040, if you want that to be your signature thing,
yeah,
have at it.
that sounds.
Question?
Yes.
When you write this letter, who do you send it to?
Yeah.
It goes to whoever requested the account, so it'll go to the Public Works Agency who's driving the project.
Shame.
Can you present it to the city board, the
Yeah,
village
city
board?
council.
I think that would be up to if they want us to do that, that's up to their
Oh, it's
discretion.
up to them,
Yeah.
not us.
Yeah.
I'm interested. I think that just for me, just letting them know that they don't have to do all of this.
Yeah.
We are not obligating them to do this. We are reacting to what they are putting in front of us. But we actually think that it's okay to do less.
Yes, yeah.
Do it sooner.
And do it sooner. Yeah.
It's not an endorsement letter, it's.
Exactly. Exactly.
Reframing
It's-
it, I think we should.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And my first comment, you guys might remember a million years ago when I was saying there's something about this letter that I am uncomfortable about, but I wasn't sure exactly what it was. But maybe that's it.
I think it's more than what you said at the beginning of the meeting. I think it's reframing this and saying exactly what you just said a second ago, like, keep the building, keep the arts heritage in programs in this building. To do that, great job of, well, maybe not great job, but here's your priorities.
We're happy to have
Let's
an
make it work.
opportunity. Yes. And preservation does not have to be all encompassing. We don't have to, we are comfortable with a little bit of quirky. It's okay. It's okay. It doesn't have to be all perfect. I mean, It doesn't have to be net
So I
zero.
feel like you have what you need to.
Yeah, I guess my only question is, I don't know how much of this needs to be retained, or if it's, this conversation comes up front and then it's based on what was presented here, or some additional comments, but there's an initial,
Yeah, I think it's.
I think,
yeah,
I think everything there needs to be retained.
yeah,
It needs an initial paragraph,
Yeah.
basically
Yeah.
saying, can we just talk about the parameters?
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
If these are your parameters, this is.
Then
the
these are our
response.
comments.
So we would suggest different.
Yeah.
things.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
What he said.
We want to include in letter to the city, something that suggests that the city's history of owning historic buildings and their deferred maintenance, which ultimately is an issue of budgeting, but the deferred maintenance ultimately leads to the destruction of the building.
Sure, this is political, like.
Yeah, love
this is
it.
happening all the time. I mean, this is.
Yeah,
we're-
love it.
We actually had votes on this. I mean, we voted 20 years ago to keep this. We voted for Harley Clark. I mean, like.
But I,
Harvey Clark is a great example. The city spent no money on it. And now that building.
this building.
is
Yeah.
This
actually-
building
And people are not happy about what's going on with this.
Yeah.
Nobody can afford
So-
to take it on.
Is this the topic for preservation month?
It's possible. This meeting has been, we have,
Extended our time.
yeah, it's getting,
Sarah, bless your heart, something which is very misleading because I just can't function at this hour of the night.
Yeah.
But this is typical, not atypical, that meetings go on to 9:30, 10 o'clock. I've been at meetings that went on to 11 o'clock and 11.
before I was chair,
Right.
before I was chair, Stuart.
So
No, I am,
my
I am trying.
suggestion for that would be that frankly, I'd be happy to meet twice a month with a
Okay.
smaller agenda and meet from 7 to 9 or 7 to 9:30.
well, that's at your, that's at the commission's discretion.
Okay, so let's,
I wouldn't mind that either, actually.
Yeah.
yeah,
Sam, because
I
it
think
is,
the topic of maintaining.
because these are important
Very,
topics.
very,
Yeah.
should be addressed in a separate.
yeah. So, do you have what you need?
2 years
Yes.
old.
Yeah.
Yes, it's our
Fair.
conversation
Fair enough.
is going on.
Good night, sir.
Good night, Stuart. So do you have what you need for the feasibility study stuff?
Yeah.
Are you guys available if
Yeah.
Kate can,
Happy to.
okay,
Yeah,
and you have what Matthew just said on record?
Yeah.
That was recorded?
Yeah.
Because take what he said and put it in the letter I sent. If everyone is okay, we'll move on to the last couple of items.
Okay.
Yeah,
Wait,
we're
does the
excited.
city have a capital plan?
Yes, they do.
Yes.
yeah,
Oh,
With
Yeah.
like name, with like
But
I,
budgets plan?
That now-
they do,
it's
but
like Swiss cheese.
It's,
Okay.
Okay, nice.
Staff,
Okay.
staff reports, Kate, can you do these staff? Oh, I'm sorry. Realtor.
Real quick.
Okay, yes, that's right. So we reversed it.
Yeah.
So now we are on to the Realtor training / certification program. You promised 30
Yeah,
seconds.
30 seconds. Originally I proposed a walk, because walks are fun, we want to get people involved. Talking to Emily Guthrie, who did this 5 years ago or so with, who's your colleague?
Carlos.
Thank you. Really to get, the goal is to reach the most people, so doing a walk is just not that feasible. Doing instead, a talk, which is what they did at one of the other brokerages, basically going around to each brokerage, doing it at their monthly meeting. We have a captive audience. We have folks who are interested in learning these things. So we don't have to worry about the audience part so much because they're already there. I have a relationship with the broker in Evanston. Emily Guthrie is a banker. So now we're working with a handful of different brokerages, which was a concern with my original plan, which was more app-based. So I think that this is the most efficacious way to go about this. Probably use the same human resources. Our friend at the History Center, whose name again,
It's helpful.
yes,
Chris
thank you.
Hartzell?
Yes.
It's late, Josh. It's all right.
Yeah, yeah, it is late and I'm young, but I've got a toddler.
Which means you're old.
Yeah, yes, and haven't had a lot of talk, a lot of great conversations with folks because of the NAR, controversy slash whatever. So plan is still the same in the fall, but we're gonna do it at, probably
A series of talks.
3 to 4 locations.
That's great.
Okay.
I think that might have
That's
been more
all.
than 30 seconds.
That's great.
All right. Thank you very much for that. Staff reports. Can you do Envision Evanston really fast, Kate?
I can,
Okay,
yeah, I can. Yeah.
because we're running out of
Well, there's not-
steam, volunteer
Yeah,
steam.
I don't have much to say. I will be giving you at least monthly updates that I receive. That being said, there should be in the future, hopefully more significant opportunities for to be reactionary, to comment on something, to review something. All that I have today to report on is that they continue to solicit community engagement, largely through a survey and ward meetings and some community meetings. They've so far reached about 740 people.
That's it.
I don't know if this is just through the survey.
Did people see that meeting in a box thing that the sent out? I don't know. I feel like one of y'all should host one.
And then,
I
yeah,
did host one.
Oh, you did? But you
Yeah.
didn't invite me.
With some
Hey, that's cool.
association.
Yeah.
Well, you're not allowed to have too many commissioners together.
No, we could be together. We just can't talk about business,
Oh, that's
right?
fair.
We could talk about.
I have a question. I have a question. Would you all be interested in a special meeting about Envision Evanston, in which we invite one of their people to come and talk to us? There would be nothing else on the agenda except for that.
That's
Would- it would be
They
a,
already presented to us.
no, that was just like, here's what it is.
Okay.
This would be actually
Like a working.
specifically about historic preservation, so that we make sure that they get preservation. If you guys have other things you want to talk to them about that isn't preservation, we could talk about it at other times. But if you're interested in that, it would be a public meeting.
yeah, that's
So everybody it would be recorded and everyone in the public would know what our positions are on these things, but at least they get a earful of preservation.
Shouldn't we invite the leadership Evanston class at that time?
The what?
Leadership Evanston.
I,
I'm not sure what that is.
The Evanston Community Foundation.
that it's, I was talking about the research
I know,
folks.
yeah,
Okay.
right. It would be a great meeting. I'm sorry. Yeah, it's so late. I mean, I'll tell you about it. I was in the very first leadership Evanston class in 1989. But you don't know about leadership?
no, never heard.
If,
Someday.
if you guys think that this is a good idea, can we organize it?
I will try. I'm not making any promises, but I would like to think that it's possible. I know that they have scheduled and scoped and budgeted for at least something like that. It seems like I'm just looking at the phases right now. Allegedly, they've reviewed all the existing plans, which means they should have digested the, 1980s version of the preservation plan, all the preservation documentation, the new preservation plan. It seems like it would be a good opportunity then to sit down with them and talk about, if they have any questions, we understand it completely. And start to move forward.
Make sure that historic preservation is a thing in their minds, because
Yeah.
I'm not sure that it is right now.
Right.
I have no confidence based on the presentation that they made that historic preservation will be included in any way.
They did add the arts and culture section.
They did?
Yeah. on the
Oh.
website.
Nice. I'm glad to hear that something we said made a difference. Can we move on past?
Yeah, this one,
Evanston?
the next one is just, that
It's
we
just-
will put out a newsletter, and if anyone has anything they would like.
So the May newsletter is, that's going to be the Preservation Month newsletter. So please, let's think about what we want to have in it. I think for sure, the Shorefront presentation that we had would be sort of the head, and the awards would be the headliner.
Can you preview that we're reactivating the awards program?
Yeah.
Yep, those will be the two big things, I think. Okay, we are at the end of our everything. So I would like to adjourn this meeting. It is 10:30. Thank you very much, everyone. And I would like to say